A huge, silent stretch of land sprawls beneath the open sky, like the world just cracked the door open for an adventure into the wild. Seeing that strange little insect instantly yanks me back to a vivid hunt by a stream I thought I'd forgotten. He stares out into the distance, and in his mind he replays how his whole life got flipped upside down just 6 months ago. The scene snaps back to his younger self, getting scolded by his companion for kicking back and relaxing while they were out in the field. He remembers their crew charging ahead because when swarming insects hit, there was only one choice left: keep moving forward. Asuras leans in with a wicked grin, staring at the screen as their live viewer count rockets past 5,000. Chaos explodes when a poisonous amoeba crawls in and panic spreads like wildfire, but he stays stone calm and keeps saying there's no reason to run. He braces to clash with the creature, and it hits him hard. These wild moments of the hunt are what define the stream. He ends the broadcast, shoots the camera a cocky grin, and tells his viewers to come back for the next episode. Moments later, he bursts into the gathering, only to shrink the crowd numbers and leave his latest investment looking like a bad bet. His companions tore into his performance, calling out how rigid he looked when that gelatinous monster reared up, and they even argued he should have made it bigger so the whole crowd would have been blown away. The group nods at his non-stop hunger to innovate, because the guild leader always drops a brand new scheme to keep their streams fresh and unstoppable. Looking at the industry, he realizes that in the last 50 years, streaming tech finally got within everyone's reach, and now the race is brutal. Mania surges through him as he snaps that if they want Blazing Serpent to crown itself the world's top guild, they've got to crank out flashier, wilder, more sensational content over and over. Right after that, he snaps into an emergency stream with a grim look, blindsiding his subordinate, Gashu, as he announces, no warning, he's been kicked out of the guild. With a sharp snap of his fingers, he cuts through Gash's confusion and shuts it down cold, telling everyone to listen to what the crowd is saying about the fire. With the broadcast lights blazing, he kicks things off by throwing a brutal accusation, saying the man in front of him has been swiping the guild's money. The stream rolls footage from inside the office and voices tear into the shaky proof. Then they point their fingers and declare the culprit is the one swinging that greatsword. The moment the news drops, the public turns feral. Viewers swarm the chat, screaming for his instant ouster and hurling accusations that he's a criminal. He stays planted at his desk, eyes locked on the chaos raging out there, while unreadable calm masks the storm building as the digital vitriol pours in. A trembling woman steps up, choking out claims of unwanted advances, and he panics, screaming a desperate, furious denial. The tension explodes into a full-on brawl as he thrashes to get free, and they snap at him again, condemning him for even lifting his hand against his companion. He plants his feet, jabs an accusatory finger at him, and barks out a formal order: get out of the guild. The second the broadcast cuts out, he sheds the mask and casually asks his companion how he did with that perfectly tearful performance. He leaned back with a grin, loving how clean the broadcast looked, and he praised the crew for nailing the costumes and editing with zero glitches. The guild leader shut the door on the intruder in an instant, dismissing the man's demands for an explanation with a chill, cutting tone. He mocked the man's pain and claimed that his leaving wouldn't matter a single bit to the guild's success. The man jerked back in shock when they demanded he drop the facade, and confusion surged as every move he made got twisted against him. He stared at his trembling hands, and the betrayal hit like a punch, because all that grinding effort was only for one thing: they promised they'd teach him the streaming techniques he'd need. In a flash of brutal motion, he got knocked flat, and they snarled that he'd always been nothing but a burden, stamped with guilt. As he crumpled on the ground, they hit him with one last, savage insult about how worthless his contributions were. He stood over the fallen man, soaking up the victory, because their ruthless show had smashed the guild's record and pulled in views no one thought were possible. He stands in the ruins of his old life, staring down a screen that reads 8,000 viewers, and with pure grit in his eyes he swears he'll smash past 10,000. Shoving aside the sting of his latest public humiliation and diving headfirst into a fresh start as a streamer. Moments later, he bursts onto the screen with a bright, practiced grin, waves at the crowd, and announces his brand new mission: Old Man's Farm Guard. With a huge grin, he holds up a bright, juicy tomato and brags that he coaxed it from the ground using special fertilizer he nabbed from a nearby cave. Then ding! A notification chimes, and when the viewer Nyatik-san jumps into the stream, he beams and welcomes them warmly, straight from the heart. The vibe snaps the second a brutal comment hits the chat mocking his farming like it's pointless and sneering. What's the use of some old man out here? He stumbles, confidence cracking under the criticism, but then he fires off a quick laugh and admits the truth. Making content that really hooks people is way harder than it looks. Then, right through all the negativity, a supportive message for Nyatik-san slices in saying his dreams are peaceful, and that calm is exactly what brings him real relief. His shoulders lift and ease in an instant, and he shoots his viewer a heartfelt thank you, so moved by that unexpected kindness it practically shines off him. A system notification blasts into the scene, but he barely even flinches. He's too stunned by the fact that kind souls still exist out there, nowhere near the toxic guilt he used to drown in. He keeps a sharp eye on his interface, spot-backing a scary warning about accidentally blasting private info, but he waves it off, claiming it's nothing more than a low-level streamer worry. He takes a deep breath, fires up the broadcast again, and boom, dust and debris explode into the air, announcing a threat no one saw coming. He gapes in pure disbelief as the familiar, hulking red lizard bursts out of the haze, swallowing the whole landscape with its sheer presence. On the digital feed, viewers across the divide spotted the creature in a heartbeat, and panic erupted instantly. They finally name it a fire dragon, a brand new Class A monster that can burn anyone to the bone the moment it crosses your path. Panic surges through the chat as observers shout that this kind of threat demands a specialized hunting crew, and they slam the warning into his head. Run, right now. He's still locked on his garden, screaming at the dragon to keep away from his tomatoes, and the sheer craziness of it all makes people panic even harder, begging him to run for shelter before it's too late. The dragon rockets forward in pure terror, and he barely dodges the first blow, leaving him reeling in stunned shock. He barely slips out of the lethal blow, and the digital crowd goes wild with shock, slamming their doubts like, is this broadcast just a scripted show? The adventurer freezes mid-step, totally thrown off by a sudden, cryptic question from his viewers, asking who that elderly man really is. A mysterious observer stares at the feed, and her face melts into real awe as she clocks his unexpected skill. While everyone else runs for their life, he curses as his precious cornfield gets smashed to pieces, fury surging every time the beast barrels on and on. He vows to give zero mercy to anyone who dares threaten his garden, snatches his blade in one sharp motion, and the crowd cheers like the excitement just exploded. The stream keeps pulling in brand new viewers, and the moment the viewer count starts skyrocketing, word of that wild spectacle spreads like wildfire. As that fire dragon looms overhead, everyone in the audience is left totally baffled, trying to make sense of brutal, high-stakes combat while he's streaming about farming. The adventurer relives a terrifying clash with a fire dragon, then freezes over the mind-blowing fact that some mysterious warrior moved impossibly fast, ending the whole beast with one single strike. So now he can't stop wondering what that power really is. He lets out a long, exhausted breath, and the day's tension finally loosens its grip as he slips into a rare pocket of peace. The camera locks onto the wreckage of that defeated creature, pure proof of the brutal skill you just witnessed. A sudden gut punch hits him. That recording device has been running the whole time, broadcasting every single move straight to an audience. He freezes in dismay, terrified that his total lack of engagement is making the viewers feel ignored and crushed. With a sheepish grin, he apologizes to the unseen viewers, admits he's hit his limit for the day, and decides to cut the broadcast. Elsewhere, a young woman watches the whole place buzz, and she realizes the chatter has exploded into full-on energy. She grins to herself, knowing the first phase of their plan just landed perfectly, and she's already buzzing with what comes next. She faced the wall of notes, eyes locked on the roaring online buzz. Everyone could feel a brand new legend about to explode into history. The adventurers gaped at the screen, his eyes bulging when the viewer count smashed past 17,000. He tried to greet his audience, but a chaotic flood of messages from fresh newcomers and nosy onlookers swallowed his voice whole. Trying to claw back control, he started droning out this boring wood-chopping lesson. Then the crowd snapped, demanding something way more exciting. He shrugged off the drop and swung his massive blade with razor-sharp precision, chopping the log clean in one thunderous hit. 2 days later, the sleepy little town of Mosrif exploded into non-stop chaos and energy. Roy rolled up to him with a crate of harvest, and you could feel the whole town buzzing. Everyone was yakking about his latest exploits. Shock ripped through him as a roaring crowd surged forward, jamming articles about his sudden fame right in his face. He suddenly finds himself ringed by the townspeople, and they explode into cheers, because his wild recent feats have shot him straight into the global spotlight. While everything raged around them, Gashu pushes through and drops a grim request, saying he can't shake the horrifying thing he saw near the place where the fire dragon once burst out. The man claims he caught sinister eyes staring up from the hole's depths, and the whole group instantly locks in, ready to investigate that lurking threat before it strikes again. They huddle up, swap plans, and lock in an all-day investigation, while making sure the town's vegetable harvest stays safe from anything lurking in the shadows. While the whole town whispers about Gosh needing a wife, a cloaked stranger shows up out of nowhere and demands to know where he's gone. She steps out of the shadows, blurting that she's his biggest fan, and then drops the bomb. Urgent information only she can deliver, and only face-to-face with him. He shoots him out like a spotlight, hypes everyone up, and starts a stampede after him as he strolls off completely clueless about the crowd swelling behind him. From the sidelines, a local resident can't help but cheer for Gashu, begging him to finally fall in love. He braces himself at the cavern's pitch-black, open maw, lantern blazing in his grip, and forces himself to step inside. Behind him, the mysterious woman slips into the shadows, her thoughts spiraling with pure anxiety over how to finally step in and reach him. She shoves her doubts aside, steels herself, and tells her fear to shut up, because this is no time to play the coward. As he crawls deeper into the cramped tunnel, he grinds to a stop when he spots a thick, sticky goo coating the stone walls. The tunnel abruptly spits him out into a massive cavern, and he drops to one knee, staring in awe at the sheer size of the place. He stares down the route ahead and realizes the tunnel system is way bigger than he ever imagined. Oblivious to what's around him, he keeps moving ahead, and deep in the shadow, the woman at the tunnel entrance watches every step he takes. Right then, a glob of cave slime plops onto her, and she groans, because she missed the chance to show him the cave's one-of-a-kind sights. She crouches in the shadows as a monstrous reptilian nightmare drops from the cavern ceiling, jaws agape, ready to pounce. The beast dives straight down, and he snaps into action at lightning speed, twisting just in time to dodge the predator's deadly plunge. The moment the creature hits the ground, she charges toward him, shouting his name with panic burning in every word. He yanks her out of danger, eyes stretched wide with pure confusion, demanding, right then, how some random stranger could possibly recognize him. The creature snaps back to life and hurls a slick glob of slime, so he shouts for her to run while he braces to chase that beast down. She refuses to walk away, swearing she's finally found her idol and isn't leaving now, while the creature tightens up for its next deadly strike. She slashes in with a swift, decisive blow, and the monster drops, so suddenly that he's left staring, stunned, and scrambling for breath as he tries to understand what just happened. She stood in the cavern's shadow, and she declared, loud and fearless, that she wouldn't abandon him, so bold it left him stunned and speechless for a heartbeat. She watched Yudimaru in awe. Those thick hides made every normal punch bounce right off like it never touched them. She spun toward Gashu and demanded, like her life depended on it, that he needed a real blade to cut through the threat. He stared in shock as she stepped forward to grab the weapon, vowing to hold it back with every ounce of strength while he stayed put and waited. The cavern blew up in chaos as they barely slipped out of the beast's lunging, toothy jaws. When he pushed for communication magic to summon help, she shut him down hard, then chose to forge a bright, glowing magical artifact instead. She ordered him to activate the object, and promised it would light up the way ahead for them. A massive, intimidating sword sat on the cavern floor, glaring against the eerie glow around it. Right as the monster lunged again, she slammed down shimmering magical barriers and shouted his name so he wouldn't lose focus on the fight. She keeps her magical grip locked tight, giving the adventurer the opening to land the final, crushing blow on the Yudimaru. He stands in the wreckage, blade finally slipped away, as the heat of the battle starts to drain from the air. He swung his gaze to his companion and blurted out his thanks, because without her interference he wouldn't have made it. She jabs a finger at the pitch-black tunnel and warns, "This is a highway for more monsters, seal it now or the town gets hit." Side by side, they smash the entrance shut, trapping the danger inside and keeping the whole nearby settlement safe. He brushes off her praise with a humble shake, but guilt stings him hard because her injuries happened while she was helping him. He traces the mark on his body and then, boom, memories crash in as he admits he used to be a mercenary with way less power than he has now. He stares at her like she's transformed his world, admitting she's always been the one he admired most. Then he finally steels himself and introduces himself. She finally dropped her real name, Misery Aronia, and told her companion that Nyakin might light up something buried in his memory. He confirmed the connection and froze because the streamer he knew was right there in front of him, and before he could even breathe, he demanded to know how she managed to find him. She told him her breakthrough wasn't luck, it came from relentless digging, replaying his old broadcasts again and again until she cracked where he was hiding. She lit up with sudden excitement and practically shoved the idea into his hands, join her in forging a brand new streaming guild right in the capital, leaving him staring like he'd just been hit with the biggest shock of his life. The young woman locks eyes with him and realization slams into her like lightning. This simple farmer is actually a legendary monster of strength. He just stands there, frozen, trying to make his brain catch up as he can't figure out why a mysterious, stunning girl would come hunting for him. As she gestures, the sky suddenly erupts into a downpour and she snaps that they need shelter, like right now. He suggests they take this conversation back to his place, and you can practically see the leaves light up, impressed, thrilled, and buzzing with excitement. The rain kicks into overdrive, slamming the wooden walls of his lonely cabin as they pull up. As soon as he lets her in, he gives her space to dump her things, then he hurries off to grab a towel so she can dry up. She freezes for a second, pulse thundering because she finally steps inside his home. With a jolt of pure urgency, she snatches her bag and scrambles for the documents inside, terrified they'll get soaked. He shows up the second she's busy, hands her a towel like it's the most natural thing in the world, and his polite, helpful attitude blindsides her. She freezes in place, hands thrust out like she just snapped into terrifying realization the instant the door swings open. Moments ago, the room felt heavy and awkward when he asked, real quick, if she'd brought a change of clothes, and she shyly confessed she hadn't. He told her to borrow some warmth from the village women so she wouldn't catch a cold, but the second he offered, she snapped back with a sudden, thunderous no, swearing she trained hard and she'd be fine. Now he's standing by the table, cheeks blazing with embarrassment, desperately trying to dodge the laundry basket with his eyes. Nerves rattling him, he whips around too fast, bumps into her by accident, and then, like a crazy impulse, decides the only way to cut through the tension is to start a fire. His gaze snags on a strange document someone left behind, its cover stacked with a list of reasons they scouted him. He starts flipping through the pages and boom, unearths wild, detailed notes about who he really is, his secret martial arts, and even the streaming plan waiting for his future. That final note hooks his attention, singing praise for his dreams, because somehow they stay harmless to absolutely everyone. He freezes in disbelief as she stands there in nothing but his oversized shirt, tossing aside the pants he gave her because they don't fit, and with cheeks burning, he blurts that she needs to wrap herself in a towel. He blurts out, craving answers, and interrogates what's really inside the documents she left behind. Then she confesses her lifelong dream to stream with him, revealing she'd been pushing for this for ages after he hit that banishment stream, and right as she talks, a knock at the door slams the moment to a stop. The visitor, sharp as a blade, snaps down the idea of joining the fan club with a hard refusal, crushing the tension with nothing but cold, blunt dismissal. The second he realizes the visitor came just to see him, he bolts out of the room on the spot, leaving everyone else frozen behind. Confusion explodes among the ones left standing as they realize he's vanished into thin air. Then the distressed visitor crumples, furious at the missed chance, wailing that they were just too late to catch him. Desperate to save what's left, the visitor grabs at Hope, pleading for him to join their guild, promising he'll shine as a top performer. But he doesn't budge an inch, just delivers a final, icy goodbye and walks out. A razor-sharp blade slices through the ear, and she snaps back with ice-cold resolve. She's done working under someone she's already decided is a joke. Teeth chattering with fury, her companion storms in and demands answers, why she's been so rude and useless, even though he let her talk in silence until right now. He stared as the woman exploded in rage, swearing she'd never forgive the slight against Gashu, her eyes blazing with pure indignation. She dug in her heels, face snapping with irritation as she swatted away the accusations and kept standing tall anyway, even with blood streaming from her hand. Her companions snapped in fast, chewing her out for flashing their power like it was nothing, then swung back to make a deal. She'd hand over Gosh's contact info if he helped recruit him. She shrugged off the tension, turned on a dime, and flashed that eerie blank smile, telling them she'd find it in herself, before vanishing so fast the others just stood there, speechless. She kept walking away, calm as a blade, telling them they'd soon wake up and realize how much talent they'd scared off with their behavior. In that quiet room, she slammed her fist down in pure frustration, fuming that Gashu's real power and that charm of his was still buried from the public eye. She stepped up to Gashu, thrust a document into his face, and demanded she explain her real intentions, while Gashu just stared, completely thrown off by how suddenly and fiercely she was drawn to him. She leaned in way too close, declared she'd turn him into the best streamer in the world, and left him totally flustered as he stumbled backward, overwhelmed by her presence. Right as he thinks he's got things handled, she stumbles, crashes into him, and embarrassment floods her face. Then she blurts out non-stop apologies, even urging him to move with her to the capital. When she suddenly got that close, he jerked back in shock, and his voice cracked into a startled shout as his brain finally caught up to the unexpected touch. Right as the tension hits full blast, Roy bursts into the room, chasing shelter from the sudden downpour, only to catch those two in a scandalous moment, and it instantly makes him question what kind of meeting this really is. He tries to steady himself, admits he gets what's going on, then demands the woman spell out her real intentions. Standing on the porch, Roy leans in and pushes him to chase his own dreams, warning that the farm's pressure is crushing down and the monsters creeping toward the village are only getting worse. His eyes wander off into the distance as he finally wrestles with his dreams, and when the moment hits, he steels himself to say what he really wants to do. Moments later, he grabs Roy and orders him to escort the woman to the inn, watching her proudly step out in her clothes now completely dry. Right before they leave, he asks to borrow the documents for the night, because he needs hours to think over that life-shifting offer hanging in front of him. He stood out in the open field, replaying everything that happened, remembering the chaos that erupted the first time he left as a mercenary, and fearing that when he walks out of the village again, it'll only crush the hearts of everyone he's forced to leave behind. Next to him, his companions felt his pull the moment he arrived, seeing how much the villagers truly cared, while they secretly prayed he'd grab the fresh opportunity right in front of him. The talk swung straight to that mysterious woman. One of them demanded why she had appeared so suddenly, but she only shrugged and reminded him that the decision now all landed on his shoulders. His face snapped tight, and in an instant, realization slammed into him as he stared at her, her words finally landing like a punch. She lit up with pure gratitude, thanked him for the talk, then instantly declared a celebratory feast to seal the moment, leaving him stunned at how fast everything flipped. The whole village burst into celebration. Locals hauled out dragon meat from their latest hunt, shoved it on the table, and welcomed the travelers to eat and drink, laughing like family. While the celebrations roared on, he leaned toward his companion and promised, "I'll tell you exactly what's going on before we head out." Tucked under the towering mountains, the village sprawled in calm silence, completely oblivious to the life-shattering choices about to ignite inside it. With a heavy heart, he faces the morning, and then a villager on the porch of a nearby cabin starts waving like they mean it, right at him. She strides up with a dazzling, eager smile, clasping her hands tight as she leans in and demands to know if he's finally made up his mind. He nods and confirms he's gone through every required document. Then he thanks them with real, heartfelt appreciation for the info they shared. With a sincere look, he stares into her drive and recognizes just how far her passion goes, and how unshakable her resolve really is. Her eyes flare with pure joy, and then she starts to blurt something out, hesitation and all, just before the whole conversation pivots. He snaps the moment shut, jaw clenched tight, and flat out says he can't make himself leave the village. A massive winged predator suddenly drops into view, and the whole air goes silent, its looming shadow swallowing every word of their conversation. Spotting the beast as a dead danger species listed by the capital, he grabs his weapon, snaps at her to back up, and swears they'll finish their conversation the moment he's dealt with the threat. He stares at the digital feed, worry tightening by the second, and the dread wyvern sightings keep popping up more and more, way too often, way too frequent. While the comments rage on, asking why these terrifying beasts look so small every time because this whole pattern screams wrong compared to what they're supposed to be. Her eyes snap wide with disbelief as she gapes at the screen, the truth crashing down on her all at once. Yesterday's nightmare with the Edimaru already felt bad, but this non-stop wave of monsters flooding their village makes her wonder if their home was ever safe at all. At home, the stream keeps rolling, and the chat detonates in chaos as panic spreads at the sight of that massive, lethal creature filling the screen. Viewers scream in pure terror, realizing the countryside has turned into a hunting ground for deadly species and the village is locked inside an escalating nightmare. A wyvern crashes down with a thunderous smash, rattling the ground as a voice breaks in to warn you, its blade-sharp claws are lethal, so don't get anywhere near its reach. He studies the beast, clocking its short-range moves and obvious patterns, then a skeptical voice cuts in fast, basically trashing the idea that this is an easy win. Suddenly, a pack of peasants surges ahead, shouting that they'll take down the threat, leaving everyone watching completely stunned by how bold they were. They step up and say, "We're here to show you what we learned over the last 6 months." And right from the crowd, a mysterious, adorable voice cuts in, demanding to know where their brand new skill came from. As the wyvern dives in, he blurts a warning, then when they brush him off and insist, he clenches his restraint, holds back and studies just what they can do. With fluid grace, the peasants slip every wyvern strike like they've done it 100 times, shattering his mind with disbelief at how far they've leaped in just a blink. The fight spikes as they shove back with wild, off-the-books tactics and raw brute force, smashing the creature with an assault it never saw coming until it's staggering, reeling, and desperate. They press in with ruthless teamwork, cornering the wyvern, while everyone watching is left stunned, dying to know who these so-called peasants really are. He clenches his fist, and a grin breaks across his face as he stares down the raw power right in front of him. That giant wyvern's totally subdued now, villagers swarm in, lock down the whole engagement, and take full control. He drives his blade into the creature's neck armor with a savage, decisive slash, roaring that tonight they're going to be feasting on grilled wyvern. He erupts into a loud victory laugh and his companion just stands there, staring with wide-eyed disbelief. As the dust finally clears, the crowd stands frozen in awe, buzzing about whether they can become his disciples, and wondering what's really hiding behind the mystery of this village. Breathing hard after that brutal push, he shrugs and says the fight was easier than he feared, while his companions stare at the villagers like they just witnessed pure legend. He replays his past decisions and it hits hard. Turns out his old no wasn't principle at all, just a coward's cover to dodge the challenge he was terrified to face. Standing tall in front of them, he grabs every eye in the room, then steels himself to spill the truth behind his brand new resolve. He announces he's riding out for the royal capital, voice rock solid with fresh resolve. And as she watches, she can only breathe his name in stunned silence. That announcement sparks a firestorm of excitement. His fans swarm the screen with non-stop messages, promising they'll back him all the way on his upcoming journey. Swept up in all that love, he nods back with a grateful smile, soaking in every good wish, and in that shared moment, his bond with him gets even stronger. Before them, the world goes still, like the land is holding its breath, watching the life he's about to leave behind as he braces for the road ahead. He jerks back in shock when she calls out that his broadcast is still live, broadcasting every twitch, reaction, and thought straight to the world. He spots the mistake and spins right back to the device, firing off a real goodbye to his viewers, while they beg him to keep his head up and trust himself. He spills his bold plan to launch a brand new streaming guild, and you can practically feel the thrill in his voice as he thanks his supporters for never doubting him. The moment that last word leaves his mouth, he whips around to face her, and the two of them stride into the unknown, ready to kick off their brand new chapter. A lonely wagon rattles down the road and its rider stares out, lost in deep thoughts about those mysterious requested streams. Once the idea clicks, registering with the guild kicks open the door to streaming requests, everything from hunting rare ingredients to diving headfirst into terrifying deep dungeons. He slides in beside his companion, eyes locked on the fresh opportunities ahead, and he's genuinely fired up about what they could become. She snaps the conversation back to the plan and declares they're going to move ahead with two solid ideas. She snapped her gaze to him and asked straight up if he'd officially registered as an adventurer yet. Her eyes ignite with excitement as she pitches a bold plan. Go all in on the subjugation and exploration streams. He nods and says variety is the only way to dodge boredom, while she grins and insists that even a stream about vegetables could somehow turn crazy entertaining. With a bright, warm grin, he hands the planning over to her, clearly buzzing with excitement about what they're about to build together. He stands in the roaring heart of the royal capital, soaking in that familiar wave of nostalgia as a brand new journey is about to kick off. Staring at the crowd, he clocked who was blowing up right now, then zeroed in on one top-tier streamer, absolutely crushing the viewer charts. The talk instantly spirals into a huge eating contest that's being broadcast live, and it's got a jaw-dropping 1 million gold prize, so the whole capital can't stop talking about it. He smiles politely and turns down the invitation, deciding to spend his energy hunting for a spot to drop off his gear and finally collapse after those brutal, long travels. A wave of heavy introspection crashes over him as he remembers his loneliness, and he can't stop wondering how his old companions have been doing for the past 6 months. Suddenly, the story drops into a brutal intermediate dungeon where a band of adventurers scrambles for their lives, fleeing a monstrous beast with pure terror. As the creature lunges, Hannah starts to turn corrupt, and the rear guard scrambles to desperately hold the line against the crushing threat. The guild's constant staff shuffle and broken attempts get shredded by unseen critics, while harsh digital feedback screams back, perfectly matching the chaos. He fixed his eyes on the screen, and the moment he saw the crowd's sick hunger for someone's downfall, his face snapped into this wild, manic grin, while the whispers about gosh quitting only fed his obsession with watching every ounce of struggle. With panic in his chest, he burst through the dungeon's dark hallways, yelling that he'd ditch the subjection's streams and carve out a fresh, way more profitable trend. Meanwhile, inside the loud, bustling lobby of the Graham Guild Association, a receptionist beams at the newcomers, thrusting the paperwork into their hands so they can register their new guild for real. They slumped in front of the desk, eyes stuck on that registration form, and the truth hit hard. They hadn't picked a single name for their guild, and they still hadn't even decided where they'd set up base. The receptionist didn't flinch. She kept that bright smile and told them to take their time, then come back with the finished form whenever they felt ready. They were still wrestling with that brutal problem when a woman stepped in, eyes sharpening with curiosity, and cut right through their thoughts to ask if they were really who she thought they were. Her face lit up with pure excitement the moment she recognized them. She clasped her hands and proudly revealed she'd been an avid watcher of Gashu's latest broadcast. She confessed she'd seen his viewer count rocket, but her sudden outburst snapped everyone's eyes to her. Then she panicked and rushed out a messy apology once she realized she'd caused the whole scene. She's glowing with pure, unstoppable excitement, bragging about how many times she's rewatched his dream, and he just can't handle it, getting visibly flustered and blushing hard at the totally unexpected praise. With pure excitement bursting out of her, she grabs his hand, shakes it hard, and promises to back him all the way. She'll help with anything he needs. He admits he doesn't have a base yet, and she pounces, asking if he's got any specific locations in mind for his new guild. She slides a document across the counter in a blur, pointing out a property she swears by, saying it'll fit a growing guild like his perfectly. They both lean in hard, eyes blazing with anticipation, poring over every detail of that proposed location. She jumps on it, vows to sort every arrangement right now, then waves them outside so they can tour the property immediately. Meanwhile, a charismatic broadcaster leans into the mic and tells his hungry audience, "I'm the voice of the Cute Girl Discovery Channel." He narrows his eyes and a sharp glint flashes through them, like he's got a secret trick already locked in to keep his broadcasts sharper than ever. She keeps talking into the mic, then whips her focus to the blonde girl right beside her, teasing her with a flirty, playful call. The digital crowd snaps to attention at once, and the chat erupts in non-stop praise for her daring move toward that stunning stranger. She didn't even flinch at the stares. she just kept piling on compliments, gushing that the girl's ethereal beauty looked straight out of an angel's or a fairy's dream. The girl calls herself Missouri and right away Weiss. The streamer cuts through all the awkward introductions, practically getting hooked just on how that name sounds. With a sharp flick of her wrist, Weiss conjures a tiny card, trying to snag the girl's attention without letting her real plan stall for a second. Missouri freezes, staring at the object in his hands, her mind going blank for a beat after that shocking move. The card is a glittering invite to the lavish Chartreuse restaurant, where the legendary songstress Melvis Shawn always shows up, so Missouri is left utterly stunned. Weiss pushes harder, claiming that turning down an old man like that would be a deadly insult to the gods, and suddenly, she's trapped into spending the day. Right out of nowhere, a flamboyant newcomer barges in and calls him out for preying on Missouri. Then the whole crowd starts whispering like they've stumbled onto a scandal. She jolts with alarm, shouting that things are getting dangerously out of control, while he stays perfectly calm, his face saying nothing. He reaches out and softly reassures her, like he's got everything locked down. The newcomer sneers at his confidence, taunting him about his fear, but he digs in and holds his ground, insisting they settle this without violence right here in public. Blowing off the plea for peace, the challenger thunders that he's a B-class adventurer from the capital and barrels forward, right into a lightning-fast counterstrike that slams him straight into the dirt. The hit slams the challenger into a wave of agony, his face bloodied and his swagger completely crushed, but he still claws at his stubborn defiance. Consumed by frustration, the challenger can't land a single hit. Then he just stares in disbelief as his opponent carves through him with effortless precision. His confusion skyrockets while the crowd watches a humiliating one-sided beating unfold. Then it finally hits. He snaps hard, shuts down the challenger's protests in an instant, and roars that he needs to hear reason right now because his patience is completely gone. He narrowed his eyes and locked in that decision. There was no escape now, he had to move. In a split second, he slammed forward, and his fist cracked into his opponent's armor like lightning. The dragon hammer's impact boomed through the air, smashing his challenger down to the ground, dazed, shaking, and totally defeated. As the dust finally settled, he dropped to his knees beside the fallen man, urging him to breathe slow and grilling whether he'd swung with way too much force. Close by, the woman watched everything unfold and quickly told everyone, "This isn't some romance," insisting her streaming guild is strictly business. She clocked that the weapon was just a cheap replica, so the challenger walked away with nothing that would leave permanent damage behind. As the dust settled, the man with the easy smile leaned in and said the challenger was only trying to shield the town's peace, using his broadcast as cover, and that proved he had good intentions all along. Suddenly, the fallen adventurers lurched up and babbled apologies, only for him to realize he'd dropped something, panic surging through him as he bolted from the scene. He watched the challenger walk away, spotted the ticket they'd left behind, and vowed to hand it back the next time they crossed paths. With the tension finally slipping away, they dropped into their seats, dug into a shared meal, and clinked mugs in a toast to their brand new partnership. Between bites, she brought up one thing loud and clear. Tomorrow they had to hit the stores to stock up her new place. While she gushed about how amazing the property was, he helped her lock it in. With a heavy groan, he suddenly snapped to it. Somehow they'd totally forgotten to name their guild, and the one detail he'd prayed was already handled was still left hanging. She started throwing out these grand, classic-style names like Asterisk Flames, Serpent of the Scorching Sky, Asterisk. But he just didn't buy into the whole dramatic show. Stunned by how ridiculous the naming whole thing was, he crumpled over the table, and she immediately cut through it, saying they should just focus on their meal. She flashed a grin and suggested they slow down for brainstorming right now, then line up the perfect words later using that classic formula. They exchanged a knowing look, finally relaxed, and got ready to dive into the rest of their night. She leans in with her companion, riding the high from their latest chat about streaming, both clearly loving the easy, light-hearted vibe of their meal. Right in that vulnerable moment, she finally blurts out that she can't pin down a name for their guild, then laughs it off. She says she got the idea just by watching him, and his presence feels kind, warm, and strangely comforting. Her eyes turn gentle as she breathes one word, "son." He instantly blushes at how hard her gaze hits, feeling a little shaken by the comparison. Then he steadies himself and throws back a heartfelt thank you. He blurts it out awkwardly because the moment she reacts like that, she just stares at him like, "What did you mean?" She slices through the tension with a dazzling grin and shouts a better, fuller name, Golden Sun. With the choice finally locked in, they turned to their companion and pitched a celebratory toast, like, to kick off their bright new future for real. The table's packed with mugs like a quiet stamp of their friendship, and it's the sign they're stepping into a brand new chapter together. He shot to his feet, swore he'd pay up and grab a drink, but his companion begged him to stay put and keep the conversation going. He slid back to the table, shot an apology for the wait, and wore a flushed face, half grateful, half worried sick about his companion's well-being. Exhaustion finally took her. She slumped against the table, and just like that, she drifted into a deep, calm sleep. He carried her to the inn, but the moment he walked in, the bad news hit. Every room was already taken for the entire night. He begged his case, and after a heartbeat of hesitation, the innkeeper finally caved, agreeing to make a special exception for his companion. The moment he laid her down, it finally hit him. This room only had one bed, and now they were stuck in the most awkward situation imaginable. Asuras looms over the sleeping girl, his heart hammering so hard the whole room feels it, his hand shaking as he wrestles with how close that moment really is. He leans in, and the air seems to twist as he closes the distance toward her still form. The adventurer wrestles with his conscience, panicking that his caution is gone as he suddenly finds himself daring to embrace her. Trapped in the room's suffocating silence, he stays locked in place and his mind barrels forward, drowning in the crushing weight of what's at stake. A cold sweat bursts over him as he panics, frantically chanting, "Calm down," because the truth hits like a punch. An older man is in this position with a young girl. The girl stirs in her seat, a soft smile tugging at her lips as she murmurs about the flood of comments, like she doesn't feel the tension tightening in the air. He slips back to the edge of the bed, the floorboards groaning under his weight, while he watches her sleep on in total peace. Morning light spills through the curtains, birds burst into song, and she slowly crawls out of her sleep like the day is calling her name. He lurks in the shadows, staring in silence as the girl clutches her head and groans, still feeling the nasty hangover from the intoxication. She blinks hard, dazed, and yells for Gashu, then spots him right there, and the shock hits her so fast her eyes go wide. She jolts upright in bed the moment he's too close, her heart pounding as he stays cool and breezes out a simple morning greeting. Blushing to the bone, she drops into a deep bow and blurts out apologies, begging forgiveness for every bit of trouble she's caused. He tries to brush off her worries, but she panics and demands he puts rest first, then deals with the guild paperwork. While the streamer chatters with the guild staff, he presses them for the real details, what kind of broadcast is allowed right where he is. She fires up a dungeon exploration app and tells everyone she's got one exact request about where it should be. The guild rep freezes mid-sentence, warning that getting permission for a site like that is a nightmare for a brand new guild, but the streamer won't back down, pushing forward to make a jaw-dropping first impression. She begged for one last favor, urging him to deliver a specific message straight to the guild president. The chat spun out toward the edge of Graham, where Misery's house loomed in the outskirts. She told me moving wasn't a nightmare at all, because she only shared her place with her older sister, and that sister was always stuck at work and gone most of the time. He clocked the connection immediately. They both lived on their own, and they both couldn't stop sharing their passion for broadcasting. Then their focus snapped to a wall plastered with notes and diagrams, and she proudly declared it their roadmap to success. They shared a spark of hope, picturing themselves climbing all the way to the top of their craft. He spilled his dream of getting stronger by copying her broadcasts, but the massive greatsword kept tripping him up, so she stepped in and demanded he train with a rapier instead. With their mission reignited, they planted themselves in front of the building and called it their brand new command center. She steps into the brand new base and freezes. This place is huge, with a sprawling yard and a massive dining hall built to perfection, and you can practically feel it. This layout was made to grow their agricultural dreams. Stunned by how massive their new headquarters was, she and her companion traded quick bursts about the insane amount of space they'd been given, then snapped into action, hauling their gear into place and slipping into their private rooms. They shift focus to Roy. He steps up and tackles the admin workload, and they make sure he's got the basics down for running the dorm and the office for the next 3 days. He brings up a fresh update and says Masiri-san told him an A-rank adventurer just rolled in here only for monster subjugation. While they're trading theories about the weird monster surge, the doorway suddenly creaks, bam, and they snap their attention to the unexpected interruption. She bursts in, all wrapped up in a towel after her shower, practically buzzing as she declares they've finally landed official permission to go spelunking in an S-ranked dungeon, while Roy's face instantly burns with embarrassment. He whips his head away, totally rattled by how little she's wearing, and when she bolts in a panic, he's left drowning in the shock of how suddenly intimate everything got. Moments later, they huddle back at the table and she starts laying out her bombshell plan, how to run a broadcast that could shake the entire region, while they hash out what that S-ranked dungeon permit really means. She says they've got to build a project that grabs the whole world's attention, because right now everyone's glued to streaming and they'll need to stand out fast if they want the funding they desperately need. A loud, boisterous figure bursts into laughter, admitting that yeah, some guilds stir up chaos just to chase fame, but that's not who they are. She nods right back, swearing their whole plan has to stay safe and fun, and Gashu answers with a calm, approving look that says he gets it. When she asks if there's some deeper reason behind his dedication to streaming, he nods and tells her it's a big deal, something that truly matters. He pivots the conversation and asks if she knows a streamer named Melvis, and she answers right away that, yep, she's heard of her. Gashu stares into his past, remembering the day his comrades ditched him at the Adventurers Guild, and he sat there alone, desperate, with 0 requests coming in. Because nobody gave him a shot in the monster subjugation tasks, he finally snapped, walked away from that whole life, and pivoted straight into the streaming guild. The talk wraps up the moment the adventurer from the Blazing Serpent Guild steps in, and he wastes no time saying he wants to team up for monster subjugation. She kept pulling him in through that screen, her light cutting through his darkest grief and the grind that crushed him every day. Her voice rang out in his room, slicing through the silence and yanking his scattered thoughts back into focus. She stared, completely spellbound, as she moved with otherworldly grace, like her presence broke right through the screen and became real. Day after day, he clung to her broadcasts for comfort until it finally hit him. He didn't just want to listen, he wanted to be the one offering that same peace to others. Even after his first solo streaming try crashed and burned, he refused to quit. He was still chasing that same connection with 0 hesitation. She spilled her heart about loving to spotlight other people's brilliance, and when she found him, it lit a fire in her again, pushing her to share that same magic with the whole world. The very next day, she teased him nonstop about the anxiety spilling off his face, pushing him to calm his nerves before the broadcast. With one sharp click, she launched the stream, and basically dared him to finally step into the spotlight with her. She flashes a huge grin at the camera, then steps in and hypes herself and her partner Gashu because they're officially kicking off their brand new streaming guild, Golden Sun. The chat explodes in a storm of messages, thousands of viewers pour in, all asking who the new faces are, and half the crowd instantly recognizes the adventurer as soon as they appear. When she watches the viewer count explode upward, she jolts in pure disbelief and blurts out that their debut is wildly bigger than what a brand new channel usually gets. Trying to stay sharp, she unfurls a banner screaming their guild slogan, and while Gosha scrambles to drag the talk back to their planned introduction, the tension keeps spiking. She throws it up with a dramatic flourish, then doesn't even realize the banner is hanging completely upside down. The moment the mistake hits, the viewers explode with confusion, and the flipped text instantly steals the spotlight from everyone in the chat. She snaps to the mistake, turns beet red with embarrassment, blurts out a quick apology, and Gasha calls out the error right away so she can fix it. With the banner finally in the right grip, Gashu flashes a confident grin and hammers out their mission: make everyone smile and carve straight for the top of the streaming world. He stared as the stream chat exploded with viewer ideas, everything from teach us great swords to dare after dare to smash an A-rank dungeon right then. He snapped his focus to the next broadcast, feeling the storm brewing ahead, because he knew the road they'd chosen wouldn't be anything close to easy. The very next day, they rolled up to the main gate of Graham, only to be greeted by two guides, and Oberyn Sigurd immediately raised an eyebrow, doubting their choice to try an S-ranked dungeon as their first stream. He waved off the guide's criticism with a confident grin, basically telling them, "Don't judge the cover, our skills are S-rank and A-rank through and through." With those strict rules staring him in the face, he realized high-ranking adventurers had to stand watch during entry, and getting into the dungeon meant he'd need a special key. Once the formalities were out of the way, he threw up a hand and urged everyone forward, practically vibrating with excitement to dive into the depths. They charged straight for the glowing, mystical entrance to the S-rank dungeon, the Blue Crystal Cave. He clutched the required key, jaw tightening, and raised it like he was about to pry open the path ahead. He shoves the key in, then bam, a blinding flash erupts and the ancient seal guarding the dungeon entrance crumbles away. He jabs a finger toward the pitch-black, yawning doorway, signaling that the route is finally open and they can move in. He listens while the guide spits out the rules in a stone-cold tone. If they die, the support team just turns around, but if the party pushes all the way to the deepest levels, they'll grab back anything the party left behind. Nearby, onlookers huddle and whisper in stunned disbelief, clawing at the same question. How did a lowly C-rank adventurer somehow get permission to even set foot in a place this deadly? They stare ahead, panic rising fast, as the duo charges on, certain this reckless plan will end in their doom. One observer gapes at his broadcast device in pure shock, remembering the wild rumors that this adventurer had just wiped out 5 flame dragons all by himself. He locks eyes with the skeptical crowd, smirks like he already knows the outcome, and then steps up, ready to prove in one shot exactly what he's capable of. With his companion right on his heels, he charges into the dungeon's depths, stepping down like he owns the place, determined to prove he's worthy to the whole world. The live broadcast kicks off with the streamer waving at her audience, bragging that they've finally made it to the Blue Crystal Caves, while the viewer count rockets straight toward 20,000. With the livestream pressure cranking up, the adventure spots the wild number of people locked in, massive, non-stop viewers watching every step. They're hit out of nowhere by a pack of wolves, and the streamer instantly clocks them as deadly Class A threats, way worse than what they'd been tagged at first. She leans in with fierce words of encouragement as he tightens his grip on his blade, replaying every lesson from past battles with monsters like these to steady his shaking nerves. Their eyes lock for a split second, and in that silent beat everything hits, fear, resolve, and the weight of what comes next blazing in their focused faces. He can't stop thinking about how unreal it all feels. Being there firsthand hits way harder than watching it through some screen. She leans in, telling him to trust his own power, insisting that his real strength is more than enough to smash whatever threat is coming. With sheer resolve blazing in his chest, he digs in and holds his ground against the closing pack, determined to track down the source of the 4 gods. He shot forward with a blinding strike, his blade carving through the air and blasting the whole pack of wolves apart in one ruthless, decisive swing. As the dust finally drifted away, the streamer erupted into cheers, gaping at the mysterious move he just pulled off. Then she revealed it was the ancient birthplace of the 4 gods' martial art. The crowd froze in stunned silence, because there was no way anyone outside the Beastman race should have pulled off something like that. He scratched the back of his head and said, "I didn't plan this, I just tripped over an instructional video while hunting for morning exercise routines." Because he'd copied those moves every single day for his health, he ended up accidentally perfecting the technique. The crowd watching the broadcast went wild with disbelief, and right there in the comments, people screamed that even their elders couldn't pull off something like this, calling him a straight-up genius. Meanwhile, the teasing turned the heat up, and they goaded him into admitting the truth about his abilities, and maybe even going after real training. She snapped her focus back to the crowd, grinning and promising even bigger thrills ahead, then urged everyone to stick around for the next burst of skill. She calls for a quick breather, pointing out just how many monsters they've already smashed through. He pauses, size-ups their progress, and realizes they're already 2/3 of the way through the dungeon. Their focus snaps to a brand-new, uncharted room, one that's nowhere on the map they're using. They push into the chamber and spot a treasure chest, classic hidden area luck, and she says broadcasting the discovery makes it an official report, sealing the reason they're allowed to haul it out. Inside the chest, they yank out a jar packed with glowing little creatures, and she gasps, "These are fulgurized." She tells him these fairies can actually glow, because the creatures spill out a gentle magical light that lights the whole place up. He flashes a confident grin at her, trusting her skills completely as they press on down the road. She watches that tiny, glowing fairy float off into the night, and pure quiet wonder washes over her face. She watches the party stumble through the gloom and realizes, way too late, how foolish it was to underestimate an uncharted dungeon's darkness, especially without a real lantern. Suddenly, a brutal swarm of steel bats explodes from the shadows, and they realize, right now, that swinging a massive great sword in this cramped space is going to be a nightmare. He snaps at her to back up as wingbeats thunder through the air, begging her, right now, to swing the light straight to his hand so he can defend himself. With the light blazing on him, he braces himself to unleash the technique called the Origin of the Four Gods. The blade shoots forward at an impossible speed, carving the air open and blasting debris everywhere like water splashing over dead leaves, leaving every onlooker frozen, staring, stunned by how insanely skilled he is. She seizes the moment and rattles off a rapid-fire play-by-play, breaking down every twist and turn of his moves to her crowd. While he stays locked in the brutal heat of battle, downward slashes, diagonal cuts, then explosive upward swings, all powered by that heavy weapon as she can't help but marvel at how he pulls it off. But with his life on the line, her loud commentary grates on him so hard that embarrassment boils over mid-fight, and he finally snaps for her to run to safety. Still, she pushes through the swarm, her blade slicing the air in tight, rhythmic precision as steel bats crash down around her. Then the broadcaster yanks her words to a stop, frustrated that her explanation got cut off right as the audience erupts, praising her unexpected combat skill. With the skirmish blazing, the swordsmen demand a retreat, calling it too deadly to stay, but she waves off his worries with ironclad confidence. She jabs at the skyrocketing viewer count, grinning so hard you can feel her nerves, because she's confident their training has drilled her for this exact kind of pressure. He clenches his gear harder, knuckles turning ghost white, and makes it crystal clear. Their top priority is staying safe together. The warrior locks eyes with her, fierce and protective, saying he won't let her get a single scratch, and she answers with a calm smile that somehow feels like a dismissal. She breaks into laughter, couldn't hold back the amusement, and as the group barrels ahead, they leave the battle's chaos choking behind them. They finally reach the threshold of the cavern's deepest heart, and ahead of them, a chilling, crystal-clear silence swallows the path whole. She stays locked on the scrolling comments, frustration and cold strategy fighting in her head as she realizes the viewer rankings are stuck at a shaky second place, while the chat buzzes and speculates about who's really coming for the top. She and her companion march straight through a massive, towering archway, the kind that screams, "Go on, the cavern's deepest secrets are waiting." Darkness shatters into something breathtaking, a tunnel packed with giant glowing crystals, lighting the way forward like a warbling heartbeat of light. She points at the crystal formations and gushes about how stunning this place is, already plotting how this wild scenery will skyrocket her popularity with the crowd. Their momentum stops cold as a low, guttural growl rips from the dark, something coiled in the shadows, its body wrapped in crackling, flickering flames. They freeze for a heartbeat and realize it's a flame dragon. Its heat blasts the air, thick and suffocating around them. She refuses to let fear steer her, turns to her viewers and reassures them that the dragon won't hurt her companion, then brushes off all the worry about whether it's dangerous or not. Even though her companion hesitated to lift a hand against a creature that wasn't attacking, she snapped at him to finish it, because her audience and the spectacle mattered more than anything. She studies the creature up close, clocking that weird blue flame and the unnatural bulge in its neck, so the just a reflection in the crystals idea goes straight out the window. The beast blinks and in a panic, she yells for her companion to back off because she can feel the predator waking up and danger hitting right now. The dragon erupts into a bone-rattling roar, and in that instant they realize they didn't just stumble into a flame dragon, they woke something way more terrifying. It rears up in front of them and an intense heat surges through the air as the realization slams in, this isn't a normal creature, it's a rare, deadly variant. He freezes in disbelief, trying to wrap his head around the nightmare of finding an undocumented creature, Then he tears into its physiology. Its body looks like the known species, but the ecology is totally different until the shock hits. This is a discovery nobody has ever recorded. Even with death hanging over their heads, she shrugs off the threat like it's nothing. So her companion just stands there, completely stunned by her cold, fearless calm. Asuras braces himself, gripping his massive greatsword tight as he studies the creature. Its motions look like a flame dragon, but he refuses to trust it, holding his breath for one undeniable sign of what it really is. He shouts at Missouri to back off as the beast barrels ahead, its low, earth-shaking rumble swallowing the ground. The beast blasts out a roaring torrent of fire, but he realizes the breath only reaches so far, so he holds his defensive ground and doesn't flinch. He realizes, panic spiking fast, that the flames aren't slowing down one bit, so that relentless heat keeps him locked in full-on survival mode. Studying the beast's anatomy, he pieces it together. Something inside it is built to keep breathing fire non-stop, with no need to ever pause for air. He launches his massive greatsword like a spinning boomerang, and the move leaves Missouri staring in stunned disbelief at how insane his skill is. The weapon whips through the air, but when it doesn't snap back in time, the creature snarls and launches an even fiercer counterattack. Missouri roars at him to shut his eyes, and when that blinding flash detonates, he snaps into motion, ready to snatch the opening the distraction just carved out. He swings with razor accuracy, slicing through the air to meet the beast mid-lunge, and just like that, the threat is gone. After he finally drops the monster, he and his partner steal a breath and share a triumphant moment, because their teamwork and victory are right there on display for everyone to see. She stares at the chaos and admits she got careless, but she's still breathing easy knowing their first broadcast ended safely. He whips around to her and thanks her with heartfelt sincerity, because her support is exactly what made their victory possible. As he digs into the creature's wild behavior, the talk suddenly turns into a real question. Does she somehow have the one-of-a-kind ability to actually talk to beings like that? She flicks the idea away with a quick, modest gesture, making it crystal clear. That wasn't a real conversation at all. He stays locked in thought, admitting that the moment he realized that creature was a living, feeling being, STEM became his way of speaking to the world. She stares at him, stunned that this guy, of all people, can show such real empathy for their fallen foe. She stares at the shimmering lights and seethes over the fact that barely anyone sees fairies as anything but tools for magic. With a sudden spark of excitement, she shoots her hand out and vows to be kinder to the spirits, because it's their presence that makes these broadcasts possible in the first place. He keeps his eyes on her, his face melting as he nods and agrees. Then he blurts out that her happiness is straight-up contagious. Out of nowhere, he snatches her up and bolts into motion, right as everything around them starts cracking, splitting, and falling apart. He scoops her up and hauls her to safety, even as the crystal structures crumble behind them, his steps razor-precise and rock-steady. She gasps out of nowhere, her face burning as she realizes he's right there. Then she quickly insists she's totally fine. He drops her in front of the crystal wall and immediately wonders, should he just slash through it with his blade or risk trying to slip past it? She thanks him for the help, but he admits he'll need a quick moment to gather the power to blast a path forward. He clenched his fist tighter, staring straight into her eyes as the world lurched under his feet. Then a hulking crystalline monster started to rise. A hulking crystal golem loomed in front of them, blasting an ancient, dangerous aura that hit like a warning. Steel wouldn't stand a chance. Right nearby, their friends scrambled after them, yelling urgent warnings as the terrifying collapse swallowed the entrance, like it was already too late to save it. He snapped his attention to his ally and pushed him to unleash every ounce of power. No hesitation, no mercy. The shock slammed into him. This was it, they were trapped, and that golem blocking the way left them zero time to carve a retreat route. He snapped a look at his blade, panic and calculation colliding as he tried to figure out how to strike the monster without getting her hurt. She stepped forward, hands shaking, and vowed to fight, refusing to be a weight on anyone else. He watched her courage snap into place. Sure, she was terrified, but she was dead set on yanking the golem's attention, and now he had to measure the risk of her reckless plan. He watched the golem's massive, jagged fist crash into the ground, blasting tremors through the cavern floor like thunder. The adventurer barked at his companions to dodge the incoming hits, screaming that survival comes first, because the crystal behemoth loomed over them, ready to crush them for daring to fight back. He dug his heels in, lifted his shield to the sky, and braced as the golem's massive limbs slammed into it with a deafening boom. He fought against that crushing force, teeth clenched as his boots scraped backward on the stone, while his ally blurted out, worried and alarmed. She finally saw the truth for how they'd live, and she screamed a warning, because the golem's life force was locked to one secret core buried inside its crystalline heart. He fixed his eyes on the glowing core buried inside the creature, knew that was the target, then surged forward to land a perfectly timed strike. He launched into a slick roll right under the golem's reach, barely dodging a crushing hit, then snapped into position to strike back. His blade crashed with a sharp, resonant clang and shattered the surface. But as the dust finally drifted down, dread hit hard when he realized the eye was gone, nowhere to be seen. He tensed up as the hulking golem lurched, its blazing core grinding over the rocky ground to dodge his strike. Right after the hit, he checked in with his companion and swore he was still standing, barely even scratched the creature's defenses. The onlookers watched the struggle unfold and start doubting everything, questioning whether that expulsion stream technique even works and flat-out judging the adventurer's skill. As the golem reared up for yet another brutal attack, he shoved his partner to keep running, snarling that staying put was basically a death sentence. She urged him to unleash his crushing technique, but he swallowed his pride and admitted defeat. His earlier tries had landed and still left not a single mark. He raged at the tactical hit. My shifting threw off his aim completely, and he didn't have the time to charge his power. She weighed every detail, praying she could hold that eye in place long enough for him to finally unleash his full power. With newfound fire in her heart, she swore her loyalty to the Golden Sunny and demanded they stick together, because only teamwork could keep them alive. She stood right in front of him, and in that silent moment, the truth hit his mind like a switch flipping. He stared at his own failures and finally admitted it. His obsession with protecting her had totally blinded him to just how capable she really was. Their hands brushed together for a split second, and in that tiny touch, a whole silent pact snapped into place. With the truth suddenly crystal clear, he snapped his head toward her and asked for her help, because he knew he couldn't clear what was coming without her. She pitched a wild plan. She'd charge the creature head-on, pin it down, and then she'd make him unleash the final, decisive strike the moment its movements were trapped. He flashed a confident grin, then nodded to the strategy like it was set in stone, ready to land the final blow. The moment the strategy kicked off, they surged in perfect sync, sprinting straight toward the shifting golem to set their plan into action. A colossal, shadow-soaked monster towers over the battlefield, and its brutal presence rattles the earth while a warrior steels himself to strike, sworn to prove true martial arts. She barely dodges the crushing hit, eyes locked in as she braces to unleash Gash's power and nail the creature's eye. Since spirits can't land a direct hit, their attack instead detonates in a blinding flash. Then the ground cracks and splits from the shockwave. The warrior stares, stunned to the bone, as the creature sprouts a third limb, and his shock spikes even harder when he spots misery trapped in that new growth. She lets out a shaky breath after barely escaping the assault, then snaps her composure back into place and pulls the creature's focus straight onto her. She snaps her arm forward and fires a perfectly timed shot, and the projectile rockets through the air straight for the target. The projectile hits dead on, smashing straight into the creature's eye with a thunderous crack that leaves it staggering and dazed. She studies the creature's core, and even if it burrows, Gashu's mark reveals exactly where it is, with no hiding place left. She locks eyes with unwavering focus, weapon poised in midair, ready to smash into the decisive moment. She glides with unnatural grace, weaving around the spirit like it's alive, her blades blazing as she times every strike to the creature's own beat. He barks the order to pile everything on the creature's head, his voice slicing through the tension as she steels herself for her next move. They move in perfect sync and explode forward together, unleashing a combined strike that lands like a crushing hammer. He channels the power of the four divine gardens, unleashing a mind-shattering ultimate secret technique that erupts in blinding light. The strike crashes in with brutal force, blade first. It slices right through the spirit's defenses as the Sting Xuan Wu technique finally locks in. The ground rips with the impact, and he stares at the wreckage, realizing cold and clear that the great sword technique hit with terrifying power. He stands amid the wreckage, staring as his friends throw their victory into the crowd, and she lights up, voice blazing with joy as she soaks up all the non-stop praise pouring in. She snaps her focus back to the broadcast, ends the stream with a small, humble smile. And there he stands right beside her, visibly shaking off the fear, relieved that their trip into the Azure Crystal Cave is finally over without any more trouble. An acquaintance nearby stumbles up to them, stunned out of their mind, like, "You actually beat that crystal golem?" with shock in their voice and grudging respect they can't quite hide. He points to his partner with steady confidence, declaring that their powers together are the real secret to winning. And you can practically see the pride of that moment lighting up his face. The newcomer snaps with obvious confusion when he hears his rank, staring like, "Wait, how am I still stuck at C when I can clearly do better than this?" And then he outright calls it an absolute joke. She bristles hard at the criticism, frustration exploding as she snaps back that their trip from the flame serpent of the burning sky has been brutal, leaving her to wonder if those cold, Major Guild standards just aren't meant for them. He hangs on every word, then snaps his head up and agrees the moment they suggest he take a promotion exam when he's back, knowing in his bones that he'll have to grind even harder from there to rise. The talk suddenly twists when the acquaintance brushes off their hard-earned win, flat out saying the dungeon success was just blind luck. She listens in silence as the critic spits out a cold verdict, saying their lack of knowledge and experience makes them no better than anyone average. The crew huddles in the cavern, and the sting of his harsh words hangs in the air while everyone absorbs that brutal rebuke. He steps up and owns it, admitting he pushed for that brutal, high-difficulty challenge even though they weren't properly prepared. He stared at his hands and realized just for a second how close they'd come to getting wiped out, because brute strength alone just isn't enough to survive and conquer depths like these. He shoots his companions a quiet, heavy apology, and you can practically feel the weight of that near-fatal mistake crushing his conscience. The critic flashes a chilling grin and says their death would barely be an inconvenience at all. He shifts his voice, barks for them to keep entertaining him, and admits that even though he hates streams, he's grown way too curious about what's going on in their guilds. The tension snaps as they shift their gaze to the fallen flame dragon, trading casual talk about how tasty its meat could be while they start ripping into it for every usable material. She broadcasts live from her Golden Sun Guild dorm, practically buzzing with excitement to spill the newest updates to her audience. With pure, unstoppable excitement, she hypes the guild's meteoric rise, since their peak viewership blew past 100,000 and fan registrations climbed beyond 80,000. Her companion can't help but tip his hat at the insane feat, then just chuckles, brushing off the humiliation of having his voice blasted to a crowd that huge. You see how fast his friend is getting drunk and she's already buzzing, insisting their next dream is gonna smash every record and hit 1 million people watching at once. She leans her head onto the table and exhales like she's finally safe, whispering how long she's hunted for this exact moment. He pours another drink and leans in, ready to hear her start telling her past. And when she reveals there's still a piece of it she hasn't told him yet, he's hit with pure shock. She kicks off her story with a 10-year-old memory near the Highway of Graham. She tailed her parents' carriage in secret, then slipped, fell off and got left behind. Trapped out in the wild by herself, she finally realizes, with a bitter sting in her chest, that she should have learned a communication spell before it was too late to call for help. She lets out a blood-curdling scream as a savage beast rockets forward, snapping its jaws shut right in her face. The creature drives its teeth into its prey and rips through it with a nasty, sickening crunch. In the middle of the fight, her companion lunges in and screams at the top of his lungs, making sure she's not hurt. He drives his blade deep into the monster, ripping it loose from its grip as blood explodes across the battlefield. As the beast crashes down, he finally feels how bad this really is. He shouts for misery, right as the fight's tension starts to drain away. A jolt of the past slams into her mind, and suddenly she's seeing a younger version of herself, joyfully reunited with her parents after that brutal separation. She bears her deep-rooted resentment, roaring that they always ditch her and her sister. She snapped back to the present, Then her companion shoved her forward, demanding they rush to the association and report the incident so they could lock in their reward. She leans in hard as the adventurer relives his past hunt for a young girl named Misery, admitting he raced to the guild in Graham and still came up empty, because nobody had any real details to go on. Those words hit her hard, in the best way. Pride surges as she realizes the kid she once rescued has blossomed into someone truly amazing, even though the whole mess behind her past actions still got her slapped with a brutal reprimand. He wipes a tear from his eye, clearly stunned by the revelation, while she pops into the room and grins as she announces the latest breaking news. The broadcast screen explodes with hype, views skyrocket, Melvish channel rockets to 1, and every other competitor gets left eating dust. As the numbers slam past 1 million, he can't help but stare at how massive her success is, yet she stays grounded, quietly admitting that their lead is already getting clawed at. She drops a casual line about her sister's brilliance and it hits him like a brick. He freezes, stumbles over his words, and can't even breathe through the shock as his mind scrambles to catch up. With a calm, knowing smile, she straight up confirms it. Melvis is her older sister and she's only just now finally admitting it. The truth slams into him like a punch to the gut. His eyes blow wide with shock when he finally grasps what her link to that legendary creator really means, and his composure crumbles instantly. He just froze in stunned silence as she spilled the story of her sister's influence, how her songs and that unmistakable presence slipped into people's lives across the globe, and how it filled her with pure, real joy. She leaned in with fresh fire, telling him that teaming up together finally gave her the chance to break out of her comfort zone, chase new ideas, and blast some brand new energy into the guild. That wild burst of energy disappeared just as fast as it came, and she crumpled down, slipping straight into a calm, deep sleep. He watched her drift off to sleep, letting the floorboards' soft creak break the silence while his mind churned on her idea to spice up their road together. Staring out the window, he wrestled with what would happen next for their exploration streams, and the moment he saw the pattern, he knew if nothing changed, they'd just loop back into the same dead, boring cycle. A brutal memory slammed into his head, proof that their shiny win in the dungeon was nothing but blind luck. He spun away from the window and grit surged through him because he finally understood. If he wanted to truly help the guild, he had to level up his own power. Fists clenched, he locked his gaze on the horizon, ready to plunge into his journey as he pushed forward to pass the adventurer promotion exam. The farm-returned adventurer clenches his resolve and sets his sights on the next B-rank promotion exam, fully convinced that only brutal training will earn him his shot at success. He pours a drink, but his mind won't stop racing through the brutal preparations he needs for the test. Suddenly, he crumples into a heap, frustration exploding as uncertainty slams him. He has no clue how to properly prepare for the challenge coming next. Seeing his panic, his companion rushes over and asks if he's okay, and he weakly admits he's making it somehow. She tells him that strategy streamers will reveal the answers he needs, then slaps a guide right on the table so he can figure out exactly what the exam demands. He blurts out how terrified he is about the written exam, and she steps in right away, offering to help him study so he'll be fully ready. They lock in on a brutal study routine, chewing through every numbered lesson step by step until the material finally clicks. At last, the promotion exam day crashes in, and she throws her cheers after him as he marches straight toward his fate. He burst into the venue, totally clueless that a woman who'd been waiting for this moment forever was quietly watching his new trial unfold right in front of her. She clenched her fist like a promise, then made her move time to go and leave him to whatever fate had waiting. He stepped through the gates of the Birang promotion exam venue, and boom, found himself packed in by a whole sea of hungry, ambitious young adventurers. With so many eyes on him, he instantly felt like he didn't belong, and the whole room's stare pressed down like a crushing weight. Whispers surged through the crowd the moment they clocked him, and people started arguing whether to go up to the guy famous for his massive greatsword. One of the onlookers surged forward, thrusting out a hand as he cheered loudly, telling him how much he'd adored every stream he'd watched. The stranger stepped up and said his name was Zohio, then admitted he was just as new as me, only here because the guildmaster told him to come. The two men huddled together as an official announcement boomed across the courtyard. every candidate had to drop their weapons and hand over their belongings before the exam even started. He shared a determined nod with his new companion, and as the exam clock started ticking, they both vowed to give it everything. The moment the written part started, relief hit him like a wave, because the questions matched the practice problems he'd studied, while a watcher nearby stared, tracking every move with sharp, eager attention. He stared hard at that paper, and his pen tore across the page as he snapped into the answer boxes with brand new confidence. The observer's eyes widened at how fast and skilled he was, and he couldn't help wondering if the guy was cheating with shady tricks to smash the test that quickly. He brushed off the accusation and zeroed in on the next stage, a fitness test where candidates had to team up for strength, running, and endurance trials. He agreed to team up with his companion, totally clueless that the guy was out to wreck his performance, holding his feet loose during every sit-up like a silent trap. The start signal blared and he immediately lunged into the exercise, grinding his muscles to lock in a steady rhythm. He fought the sudden wobble, crushed by a pressure that tried to yank his balance away, while his partner deliberately refused to give him a steady hold. He glares at his partner, jaw clenched with pure frustration, calling out the sabotage that almost wrecked his physical test. The tension snaps as his partner plays it off with a clumsy apology, then lunges, making his sudden move hit with a nasty, jarring impact. Medical staff burst onto the scene, hands blazing with restorative energy as they clamp down and steady the injured examiner. Just as his eyes flutter open again, the medical team rushes in and tells him the strength trials are over. Now he has to push through the running test if he can stand. His partner tosses out a hollow compliment about his fighting spirit, then turns his back fast to gear up for the next phase. He's left in shock as the exact same person shows up again right when the proctors shout that the running test will be split into groups of 5. Even with the danger screaming at him, he won't back down, because if he stops now, he'll be instantly disqualified. He steps up to the starting line, muscles screaming, yet when the signal finally hits, his resolve locks in like steel. He surges ahead with pure, ruthless focus, blasting past his rivals so they can barely stay in the same breath, even as his body screams under the strain. The next trial barrels toward him, and he braces hard for the exam's jump section. With a thunderous jump, he vaults over the obstacle like it's nothing, and the others just stare in disbelief at his ridiculous athletic power. The crowd murmurs in stunned disbelief, wondering if his incredible performance is fueled by obsession or pure, uncut talent. The whole crew crowds together for the endurance test, and they're ordered to rip through 100 brutal laps around the track. As the race kicks off, Zohyo instantly trips up, stumbling over hidden croup traps right at his feet. Then the story snaps into a martial arts exam, where fighters prove their worth by battling with weapons or going all in on hand-to-hand combat. He strides up and demands the scoring rules, pressing hard to find out if stacking multiple weapons actually buys you extra perks. He shows off pure mastery, slinging sword, hammer, spear, axe, and dagger like they're all extensions of his arm, until the examiner is left completely speechless at his insane versatility. With a swelling crowd of admirers circling him, he stays humble, but the buzz from fans obsessed with his wild, one-of-a-kind martial style is skyrocketing. Right nearby, the whole vibe changes. One lone figure sits in the cafeteria, and the crowd's whispers swirl around them like a storm. From a safe distance, the rival spots him. Yep, the infamous plague god snaps with a bitter grudge and instantly worries how the guild master will react to the chaos still raging. Tension rockets as a medical team barrels past, sprinting straight for the subjugation exam venue, and everyone nearby can't help staring. They haul the fallen candidate on a stretcher, a brutal warning carved in silence for anyone who thinks they can fail that test and walk away. Even with that grim sight staring him down, he stays stone calm, nods the moment he's called, and steps forward to gear up for the next stage. He charges up to the towering gates of the subjugation exam because the final showdown is waiting inside, and the VIPs are watching every step. He stands before the examiners and they start trading insults about their ages. Then they set their sights on the great sword-wielding candidate about to show up and prove himself. Guild Association President Kate Allman tore into Adventurer Association boss Begin Bremis's outfit, and Begin just laughed it off loud and proud like the insult didn't even land. They snap their focus to Obel, thank him for backing them before, and admit how much trouble and intrigue he keeps stirring up around them. He strides into the arena and the crowd instantly erupts in confusion, because his signature weapon is nowhere in sight. The examiners go wide-eyed when they realize he plans to step into the test with nothing but his bare hands, trying to prove what he can do without ever turning lethal on the monsters. He looks back on his new viewpoint and realizes straight-up sword swings aren't enough anymore. Now he has to use what he learned in his studies to hit the exact weaknesses of every enemy he faces. He leans in and admits to his partner that even after that big speech he's still uneasy, because his new tactical plan might flop. She flashes him a calm, reassuring smile and suddenly his resolve clicks into place. He nods to himself, steels his heart and prepares to take on the test waiting ahead. He stared at the arena gates as they flipped open, casting a deadly gauntlet. Randomized syringe threats, a crawling mushroom, a poison amoeba, and a swarm of goblins. He scans the sight and with a calm, focused nod, he silently admits, "Yeah, this is going to be tough." The signal blares and he snaps onto the sluggish mushroom, closing the gap with practiced, pinpoint control. He knows that mushroom coughs out toxic spores the moment someone gets too close, so he slams it hard into the air to blast the danger outward. Since the poison amoeba shrugs off every physical hit, he yanks his swing just right and lets wind pressure blast its gelatinous body across the floor, sending it skidding away. Then he snaps his focus to the goblin. Yeah, they're nasty in packs or when they're lurking, but out in the open and alone, they're way easier to deal with. With a thunderous shout, he smashes the goblin dead center with a dragon hammer, one brutal hit, and it's instantly wiped out. From the observation deck, the examiners stare in rapt fascination as he flashes that confident grin and celebrates his strategy's winning grant. He's standing in the arena when, out of nowhere, those heavy boots scrape the ground, yanking his attention instantly. A man staggers forward, dragging a massive weapon that hauls behind him like a curse, mumbling under his breath about how impossibly heavy it feels. From the observation deck, the onlookers traded confused looks, staring at the newcomer like, who are they and do we step in? He shouts at the approaching figure, demanding to know if he really dragged that heavy weapon all the way here, only for a cold, cutting warning to hit him hard. The exam room isn't for games. Rage twists his face as he snaps his accusation, "Don't play dumb," while committing vile acts, glaring so hard that even the usually unshakable Asura's sand looks like it's been pushed into fury. Hearing that legendary veteran's name, he froze, then just managed to say it again, shaking with disbelief. A furious man hoists his weapon overhead and vows he'll make him pay for the pain inflicted on Asura's sand. Then the showdown kicks off in full force. A gigantic winged monster drops out of the sky and yanks a sword straight out of midair as Gashu and his companions stare in stunned silence, their minds screaming, where the hell did this thing even come from? He freezes in shock as the weapon clatters down to the ground right in front of him. The creature touches down like a whisper and the man gently strokes its feathers, thanking it for the help while it finally settles in. He steps up and calls himself the S-rank adventurer and beast tamer SCMA bandager, then drops the bomb. He was specifically asked to watch Ghosh's exam, leaving the poor kid staring in full, stunned confusion. Seema snaps his focus to the creature and calmly asks if he should wipe out the nuisance that's been wrecking everything. The beast rockets forward at insane speed, streaking past the shocked onlookers like a blur and vanishing in a heartbeat. He braces as the creature towers over him, and his confusion instantly snaps into full-blown panic while he blurts out, "What's happening?" Sema jabs a finger at the others and spits that they're the scum who have been sabotaging the exam since day one. He stood his ground and just his presence alone snapped the saboteurs into panic when they finally realized their secret weapon gone had been neutralized. The creature lunged with a desperate, clumsy swing, but the attack got swatted aside in seconds, and the shock hit hard when his hidden poison caltrops finally came to light. With a smooth, practiced motion, he dropped to one knee and tended the beast, his face locked tight as he spoke straight to its pain. He stared hard as the beast breathed out, and the tension in his jaw eased just a notch while he sized up what was coming. He snapped his eyes to the defeated saboteur and calmly told them to de-escalate before things spiraled, and to talk it out like rational people. Then he swung his focus to the examiners, pushed the creature into their hands, and calmly told the guy to disinfect his mouth, straight up brushing off the man's gratitude with stone-cold composure. As the others lunged in, he barked for them to let go. His authority surged so hard they had no choice. He finally snapped his gaze to Gashu, his whole attitude shifting as he geared up to uncover the real reason they'd pinned him with exam monitoring. He pushed harder, eyes sharp, and accused the other of cheating just to slip into an S-ranked dungeon, while the guy still only had a C rank. The accused man jerked back in terror, a sheet of sweat pouring down his brow, and he snapped that the accusation was wrong, swearing his party had followed every rule to the letter. In the hushed corners of the Graham Metropolitan Library, a young woman sat locked in, buried in her studies beneath towering shelves packed with ancient secrets. She was about to speak when a man stormed in. Sigurd, her former travel buddy, though she just couldn't pin his face. Sigurd dropped into a seat and said he'd come to study the Four Divine Bees style, and she nodded politely like, "Got it, you're here to research." While they talked, he casually unveiled his magic, broadcasting and communication, and it left her staring in shock. He then cursed the glow bug's escape, then swore he'd master lighting magic so he could light up every move for what came next. Side by side, they dove into an ancient text and uncovered the skybox technique, something so powerful it felt like it was made to supercharge everything they were about to explore next. She shoots out a quick apology, then a stern librarian snaps her hand out, silencing them instantly. She shrugs off the reprimand and can't stop thinking about Gashu's skyrocket. His weird, one-of-a-kind techniques are all anybody talks about now. He swats away her compliments, claiming he's just a scholar of the Four Divine Beasts, then suddenly lights up as he geeks out on how to forge a blade with spirit flames. Their animated debate gets slammed to a halt when the librarian strides in, and fury twists their face at the non-stop noise. She clamps a hand over her mouth, blushing hard, because her excitement had somehow spilled her voice too loudly through the quiet hall. Elsewhere, a man faces his companion and grills him about whether what they're seeing unfold in front of them is even real. He stares at his target with icy calm, and with a sinister smirk he declares that troublesome adventures should be wiped out for good. The target's eyes widen in pure shock as the man surges forward, snapping the distance shut in a blur. He lunged forward like a bullet, his fists landing in perfect rhythm, and as the fight heated up he brushed off his opponent's confusion, then mocked him for being nothing but a mindless brute. The fighter froze mid-battle, soaking in the massive arena around him, and admitted he was totally thrown off. He couldn't wrap his head around why he'd been tossed into this humiliating public spectacle. Even though he was totally thrown off, the crowd's expectations pressed down on him like a storm cloud. And when he admitted he didn't fully get where his reputation came from, that massive roar from the stands still lit a fire under his resolve. With desperation blazing in his eyes, he begged to be taught the real mindset of a top-tier adventurer, because he would not fail the faith everyone had pinned on him. His opponent flashed a chilly, knowing smirk, daring him to prove he's got it. No talk, just action. Suddenly, the whole mood snapped. This man in front of him moved with chilling, newfound grace, and his fighting style flipped instantly into a brutal, non-stop storm of strikes. He barely managed to shove the incoming blades aside, eyes snapping wide as a sudden chill rolled off his enemies. One look at their aura told him this wasn't a fight anymore. It was a kill attempt. The assault kept hammering forward at blinding speed, and he could barely keep up as his opponent seized the opening again and again, driving him into a frantic, last-ditch defense. He slammed the brakes on the brutal sparring match, and the sheer weight of his presence snapped everyone apart as he shouted that the fight was over. With his eyes locked on SEMA, he snapped that the clash had spiraled way past the boundaries they agreed to. He didn't back down, he insisted he hadn't truly lost control, and if anyone doubted his methods, then the job should be handed to Abril instead. The tension snapped as he stepped forward and revealed himself as Big in Bremis, the guild's head, then hurried to apologize for that sudden, jarring interruption. He told them his plan in the exam was to throw the candidate against someone truly worthy, then admitted it somehow blew way past that and turned into an unnecessary nightmare. Staring at the chaos left behind, he lit up with that deep, long-time belief in the candidate's potential, while everyone else traded tired looks, like, seriously, who could have even made today make sense? Once the chaos finally calmed down, he snapped his focus to the candidate and handed them a proper congratulations, because they'd cleared the B rank exam. He stood tall, staring down the ordeal with unshakable calm, then shrugged off the whole spectacle as nothing more than a test of an adventurer's mindset. He flashed a soft smile and urged his companion to own their failures, because every mistake was a step in learning. With one sharp, decisive gesture, he sealed it. This was the heart of the whole matter. He tore his focus away and urged them to head to the infirmary to make sure his partner was okay. While they walked, he asked if his companion really planned to chase higher ranks, because scoring in a rank usually demands 5 years of achievements. He explained that the association runs an early promotion program. If a candidate has what it takes, the guild can skip the usual waiting period straight away. Then he dangled an early promotion for his companion and pressed him for his honest thoughts right there. The truth slammed into him. He'd been granted an A-rank license, and now that prestigious badge sat heavy in his hand. He blurted out that if an A-rank adventurer's workload starts piling up, it could wreck his streaming career, so he went hunting for advice before he fully threw himself in. He listened as she leaned in and begged him not to let the chance vanish, swearing she had a stack of killer creative ideas ready to fuel their next broadcasts. He whipped his head away and decided to hold his final answer because once that promotion hit, he'd finally storm into high-level dungeons without having to beg permission again. With a heavy sigh, he replayed the bureaucratic nightmare it took to get into the Azure Crystal Cave, one mission that demanded way too many people pulling strings. With a hard nod, he underlined one thing: going forward, they'd need sharper coordination or they'd trip into that same mess again. They decided to hit the town for a celebratory meal. Then he tossed out a playful warning to keep the drinks in check. Meanwhile, by the Serpent of Scorching Skies, a savage kick blasted a man off his feet, right as he was being torn apart for his total bone-deep incompetence. Chaos erupted when the guild members snapped at each other over the failed exam, tempers spiking as they cursed the dwindling number of adventurers and the streams drying up their revenue. As the chaos roared on, someone blurted out a plan: re-recruit Gashu, because they'd spotted him at the exam site and it looked like he'd been training like crazy even after getting expelled. He fought to keep his disbelief in check, yelling that there's no way someone once written off as deadweight could spike into power like that so fast. Seeing his stream pop up on screen only cranked the frustration higher. He didn't even get a second to breathe before his reputation exploded. As the broadcast kept rolling, they finally clocked the girl trailing him, an ex-member of their own guild, while they stared baffled as he mowed through a whole swarm of monsters like it was nothing. The screen numbers kept climbing past 120,000 people watching at once, and suddenly our little 10,000 reach felt downright laughable. Still reeling from the shock, he casually tossed out that he'd just decided to join a fan club, like the whole professional disaster blowing up around him was nothing. The moment the orders snapped, "Fire Ohio," now the whole air turned vicious and they kicked him out of the guild on the spot. Frustration snapped, his heavy fist slammed the desk, and the pressure finally exploded out of him. With the desk looming in front of her, she admitted in a cold, thoughtful voice that she'd totally misjudged what he was truly capable of. She stared back with a knowing look, silently waiting for the guild to finally wake up and realize what massive talent they'd just thrown away. Then bam, his thoughts snapped to a single, searing realization. He had to level up his own broadcast, make it way more spectacular than anything his rivals could ever throw at him. He snapped his focus to the far-off, glowing silhouette of Chartreuse, the legendary hangout the elites swear by, and wondered if the wild rumors about its insane wealth were actually real. A wicked, predatory grin snapped onto his face as a devious plan started locking into place in his mind. He snapped his head toward his companion and demanded she grab 2 tickets to the exclusive venue, leaving her frozen in shock at the sudden request. With fierce determination blazing in his eyes, he mouthed a silent challenge and vowed the world would soon see what he can truly do. She leaned across from her partner, smiling like it was all a game, but her eyes screamed calculation, because anyone who dared to underestimate them was about to get hit with a brutal lesson. A flamboyant man flashes a huge grin at the crowd and tells them with a flourish that today's broadcast is officially over. His face freezes mid-expression as he spots someone or something he never expected, and he instantly goes still. Nearby, a young woman freezes in shock. Her eyes bulge the moment she spots who's coming. With a sudden burst of energy, he lunges forward, eyes blazing as excitement takes over. then he shouts that he finally found her. He thrust a tiny item into her hands, telling her he'd been hunting her down just to return it. She grabs the returned object with a huge sigh of relief, back in her hands again, even with that small damage it picked up along the way. The man can barely hold it together, tears spill as he watches the lost item come back, and the whole moment hits him like a gut punch. They huddle together, trade sincere apologies, and lock in mutual respect, then finally slam the misunderstanding shut for good. She clutched the ticket like it was her lifeline, eyes wide with shock that quickly turned into realization, because after watching the Golden Sun broadcast, she felt painfully small, and she knew this gift wasn't just kindness, it was a lesson she had to learn in humility. The flamboyant adventurer demanded she keep it, then lit up with sheer joy as he gushed about the wild future broadcast waiting for her. Then he whipped around to his companion and urged, "Use the ticket, don't waste it," because he had zero plans to let it slip away. With eyes shining and tears trembling, she accepted his invitation, smiling right through it and thanking the flamboyant man for his kindness. Moments later, a carriage rumbled down the quiet, moonlit streets, sweeping them toward whatever was waiting next. Inside the carriage, he admitted the whole thing felt a little embarrassing, but seeing his companions so dead set on their mission was honestly a breath of fresh air. She hung on every word as he said her outfit looked 1,000 times better on her than it ever could on him, so stunned she couldn't speak for a beat. A shopkeeper butted in with a smug grin, bragging that his shop also dealt in bridal wear, and basically urged them to come back when they needed anything. She blushed and drifted into wedding rehearsal daydreams, while her companion fretted that he might have accidentally said something weird. The carriage slammed to a stop and he shot out first, thrusting his hand out to help his sister down as they finally reached their destination. They stood before a massive, glowing estate, both frozen in awe as the night sky made that beauty feel unreal. They strode through the grounds, soaking in the atmosphere like it was electric, and then it hit them: this was Chartreuse, the capital's most prestigious restaurant. A staff member took one look at their tickets, checked them in seconds, and waved them toward the lobby, then dropped the bomb that Melpis had a special vocal performance lined up for the evening. He got the heads up that the whole event would be broadcast, and he nodded like he already knew. As she drifted toward the grand staircase, stunned by every detail, her foot skidded on the polished floor and she nearly face-planted. He lunged out and caught her, and right as they both steadied themselves, they felt the floor's slick, treacherous greed under their feet. She shoots out a steadying hand and yanks the man back up after he's been dumped on the floor, right after her own stumble. A worried figure rushes in to check on everyone's safety, but the group quickly waves them off. "Don't stress, we've got this." He spots a familiar face and stares in shock. She's here. Then it hits him: the guild's social gathering is the reason he got that ticket. She confirms who she is, and boom, she reveals herself as Melbis, leaving him completely stunned. The second she clocks who she really is, she whips around and introduces Gashu to the woman right in front of them. She catches the need for privacy and whispers for them to step off to the side, so he obeys without arguing. As they squeeze past, they lock eyes on the sisters, watching their strange connection unfold, stunned by how unreal it all feels. She steps forward with perfect poise, announces herself as Melbis Aronia, and tells them in no uncertain terms how grateful she is for everything they did to care for her little sister. He shrugs it off with that signature humility, brushing his actions off like they don't matter. He froze in stunned silence as she let out a chuckle, and the words hit like a thunderclap. She'd heard everything about him from Missouri. She tapped her finger to her lips like it was a secret code, and that playful hush had him instantly flustered, sputtering, "Wait, what did you say about me?" Meanwhile, the streamer turned to her viewers and gushed about his humble, kind heart, then confessed her wild dream to someday sit right beside him during a live broadcast. She reached for his hand and begged him to watch over her dear sister, and that simple touch snapped him into a full-blown panic spiral, terrified he'd respond the wrong way. An associate stormed up and signaled that it was go time for Melbis. She had to start prepping for her upcoming engagement. She grabbed his hand tight, pouring out her gratitude for the meeting, then flashed an invite: come see her perform later that day. That single touch slammed into him, leaving him utterly wrecked, his thoughts spinning as he tried to process the sheer intensity of what just happened. With one last dramatic wave, she dashed off to handle her duties, then left him standing there while everyone else practically bounced, waiting for her to blow them away. He froze in the grand hall, utterly stunned by the sudden twist, and blurted out, "What just happened?" The whole place pulsed with polished luxury. Guests lounged at tables, soaking in the extravagant splendor like it was pure entertainment. Right in front of him, the table gleamed with mouth-watering masterpieces, each dish arranged with obsessive, careful perfection. His companion's eyes gleamed as they dug into the meal like it was pure magic, but he couldn't hide the fact that the whole thing hit him way too hard. She savored that rare, shimmering salmon like it was pure gold, then her eyes lit up at the legendary boa meat. She was so lost in the flavor that nothing else mattered. He nodded along with her words, admitting how time could slip away in a place like this, then reminded her that Melba's performance was about to start. As the lights faded, the whole room went dead quiet, like the calm right before the main event explodes. The door swings wide and there she is, Melbas, the guest of honor, stepping forward with the power to kick off her long-awaited performance. She lights up her viewers with a bright, warm smile, then waves at everyone in the broadcast as the chat explodes with compliments and raw anticipation for what she's about to perform. The moment she steps onto the stage, the air around her ripples with shimmering magic, and the nearby observer can't help but lock in on her. Right before the first note even hits, the online crowd starts to squirm with pure excitement, clocking how stunning her footwear looks, and freaking out over just how many people are watching at the exact same time. Her expression flickers just a little, and a guy in the crowd instantly notices. He freezes on the spot, stunned that what he just saw might have really been her smile. Caught in a lone, blazing spotlight, she stands dead center on the stage, and the room's silence hits like a tidal wave of pressure. She lifts a graceful hand, her confidence rock steady, and steps in like she's about to blow the room wide open with her voice. Nearby, the musicians snapped their instruments into place and flashed the guests the cue. This performance is about to explode. With a sudden burst of raw energy, she starts to sing, and everyone below is instantly struck dumb, captivated by the sheer force of her presence. Meanwhile, a small group huddles in a dim room, their faces serious as they trade quiet, no-nonsense words. She throws her hands into the air, her voice dripping with pure admiration as she talks about someone truly special, until her companions go totally silent, stunned for a beat. As she keeps reflecting, she remembers how her sister started way too young, singing every single day, working non-stop, chasing the dream of leaving a mark that would actually last. As she talks, she finally admits to the group that for years she's been nursing jealousy toward her own sister, and she's kept that ugly secret buried until right now. She poured out the whirlwind of feelings she had while watching her sister blow up on her broadcasts, so proud it hurt, yet haunted by that lingering, bitter sense of not measuring up. Her gaze drops to the floor and she finally confesses the truth. She can't stop feeling like she came up short next to her sister, and it's got her scrambling to find her own way. He leans in, listens like it matters, then drops a calm, reassuring truth. Missouri's got her own kind of courage and wisdom, and it's all hers. Missouri tilts her gaze upward, and her face melts as she finally lets his words land and the truth sinks in. She stares with wide, glistening eyes, completely wrecked by the heartfelt words they share. A soft laugh slips out of her as she realizes her sister, Melbas, once said the very same thing to her. She reaches out and with one soft gesture her face relaxes, like she finally gets him completely. The whole room snaps into a new mood when she blurts out her feelings for that song, and the guy across the table hits the same note. With pure grace, she rises to perform, her fingers fly over the keys as she pours her entire soul into the melody. With the last notes dying away, she steps up in front of everyone and pours out a sincere thank you for showing up. The digital broadcast metric skyrockets. Over 1 million people swarm in, thrilled they got to witness a performance like this at least once in their lifetime. She catches the comment swarm about some mystery guest, wraps up the stream with style and promises she'll be back in no time. She watches a patron snap his finger toward a dish like a weapon, demanding to know why this place is serving ingredients that could turn deadly. Tension snaps into the air as soon as the man spots that familiar face and blurts out in pure shock, "What's with the asterisks showing up right in the middle of all this chaos?" He steps up and introduces himself as the restaurant manager, calmly shutting down the claim that a venom scorpion bone was found in the meal, while the diners around him start whispering in panic. Asura studies the whole mess, gritting his thoughts. Yeah, that venom scorpion is deadly, but those black bones, they're unmistakable and you almost never see them here. She keeps her cool and slaps on a title for the chaos, then hides in a fancy restaurant to broadcast it live and reel the audience in. The manager slams the idea of contamination shut, claiming their kitchen runs brutal quality checks, but the crowd that wants proof just doesn't buy it. Chaos detonates when another diner finds the same black bone in their own plate and panic spreads fast. Everyone screams that this contamination isn't a one-time fluke. He gapes in disbelief, trying to square the managers bragging about high standards with the evidence staring them straight in the face on those tables. He drops into the seat across from his partner, eyes locked on them like a blade, while the tension at the table finally snaps. Right beside them, a patron clutches her chest and gasps as a sudden, awful wave of sickness hits, while the man nearby panics and scrambles with clear, frantic worry. The moment diners noticed what happened, the restaurant erupted into chaos. Whispers turned to panic as everyone realized even this legendary place just suffered a catastrophic collapse. He lets out a low, chilling chuckle, grinning like he can't wait for the disaster to bloom, then leans in and demands his companion's attention with a sinister request. Cold as ice and razor-focused, he declares that even a former superior can't ignore just how serious everything in front of them really is. He leans in for a closer look and his suspicion snaps into place. This isn't a bone from a venom scorpion at all. As he scans the tables around him, he realizes only the diners who take a bite start dropping proof that someone used a targeted poison. He snaps into action, orders his companion to hunt down answers, and then locks in on the investigation himself. He swivels to his associate and demands they inspect that suspicious bone, because right now they're stuck in the middle of something dangerous. His eyes narrow as it clicks. The culprit doesn't even know what the poison really is and he's ready to weaponize that blind spot. He shoots his hand out and snatches the object barehanded and the crowd recoils because they're terrified it could be toxic. After a quick once-over, he declares with total certainty that it's absolutely not a venom scorpion bone and his companion just freezes, stunned by how deadly accurate he is. He tells them that a real venom scorpion bone turns see-through under the light, and that the bone in his hand is built completely differently. He storms up to the man and demands his real name, and the guy instantly breaks, stammering that he's just a farmer named Gashu who panicked the moment the pressure hit. After that admission, he dives into the truth. Venom scorpions slip into the cracks of medicinal herbs when the rainy season hits, then get stirred up and turn the harvest into a total nightmare. As the tension snaps, the crowd nearby clocks how shady the man's story really is, murmuring that he's a former farmer, and one sharp-eyed observer tells everyone, "Stop staring at him. Focus on the magic." The air turns heavy and then, like a shadow with teeth, a dark presence crawls in, spreading eerie magical residue across the floor and yanking everyone's attention to the unsettling phenomenon. She freezes in shock, locks onto that dark liquid, and realizes it's the very poison from that fateful day, hardening her face with brutal certainty. While everyone watches the spectacle, they can't stop gushing about how charming the woman in that dress is, and they're clearly thrown off by how wild everything is turning. She steps up and tells everyone, voice steady and sharp, that the magic text she just studied says these weird anomalies hit when a caster's focus gets yanked, because that kind of disruption scrambles their magic and makes it go unstable. Her insight hits and the afflicted suddenly burst into relief, like a miracle just snatched the nausea away. She stood her ground and demanded the broadcast be cut off. She wanted to hash it out privately, far from prying eyes. He shot back at her on the spot, grilling her about how she could be so sure about the magic's nature, and he shrugged off her claims as nowhere near enough proof to pin him as the culprit. She was left reeling by his defiance, then snapped that his word alone couldn't clear him, demanding how he could be so certain he was right. He flashed a smug, knowing grin and admitted his past moves were shady, but he made it crystal clear that every word he spoke was still ironclad truth. The air went heavy as he insisted, "I'm the only one broadcasting, and even if they dug up the remains, they'd never be able to prove those bodies belonged to him." He leaned back with a razor-cold voice and dared them again, "Prove it, with real, solid evidence or shut down the accusations." Suddenly, everything snapped to her. She thrust up a device and shock slammed into her face as the name on the screen appeared, Melbus. While I was replaying the latest broadcast, it hit me, she'd quietly slipped something onto the plates all around. She stood in the middle of the crowd, calm on the surface, but you could feel the tension crawling beneath it as someone demanded to know if she had anything to say to defend herself. He snapped in a furious rage, jabbing an accusing finger, yelling that he had nothing to do with it, because the magic and every move were all her doing. The crowd hissed in whispers, clocking how clear his orders were, and how that blatant attempt to dodge the blame wouldn't fly. With the pressure crushing down, a hand lunged forward and grabbed him, basically demanding he come along for more questioning. He jerked back hard, screaming at them to stay away as he fought to twist out of their grip in the grass. As he lunged to run, a voice snapped, "Wait!" But he shoved past the others, clinging to desperation as he tried to escape the confrontation. It hit him all at once. He crumpled onto the floor, gasping, fighting to get his feet back while the weight of everything crushed him. He's still pinned to the spot, his captor towering above him with a cold, unblinking stare, while he's forced to swallow his pride and admit it. He's been amazed for ages by his companion's genius, those brilliant, out-of-nowhere ideas that always seem to come to him like it was effortless. Then he keeps thinking and admits that trying to run his own broadcasts clobbered his pride, because he finally sees how brutal it is to make content that truly hits both him and his viewers. The captor snaps his fingers and barks for silence, his patience suddenly thinning in the air as rage drips from every sharp command. With a surge of defiance, he clenches his fist and rockets forward, trying to rip himself free from the hole. As the fight rages harder, he starts questioning the broadcast itself. Was this really the road his companion wanted him to walk all along? Then his captor snaps, bursting into a violent, panicked fury. The captor lunges in and slams his hands down in a technique called the Dragon Hammer, cracking his target with crushing, unstoppable power. The hit slams him back, and the stuff he was holding bursts out and scatters across the floor as he loses his footing. He drops to his knees, frozen in shock as his opponent's power spikes out of nowhere, and he can't stop asking himself if he's gotten weaker, or if the other guy just blew past him in an instant. He's still sprawled on the floor, crushed by defeat, while the guests around him keep partying through the night like they didn't notice he's fallen. A woman storms in and cuts through the tension. "I'm Misha from the Duke's household," then gushes about Gash's broadcasts and can't wait to team up for a live stream at the manor. The whole crowd snaps their eyes to the commotion, and in a heartbeat, curiosity crumbles into worry as they see what's happening. With a gut punch of regret, he admits it. No matter what happened, letting an outsider slip into their ranks was the wrong move, and he owns every bit of it. When the dust finally starts to settle, the men huddle up and argue about what just happened, who really had Gosher's fingerprints on it, and why they needed that whole blow-up in the first place. He stares back at his past and realizes that the one who used to stand above him would have been furious at the sheer size of the chaos that's erupted now. With a face twisted in pain, he begs for mercy, admitting he knows exactly what everyone's gone through, and he pleads, "Please, can you find it in your hearts to forgive the one who wronged you?" Around them, everyone goes quiet, faces twisted between stunned shock and deep, trembling thought as that desperate plea hangs there, heavy in the air. He stands in the middle of the roaring banquet hall, eyes locked on every twist in the room as the tension melts away and the night turns into a full-blown celebration. Settled in a private VIP room, they grilled the guild rep about why they were meeting. Was it thanks, a gift, or a formal talk about that shattered plate and the compensation that came with it? Because this guy always spirals into pure anxiety whenever money and responsibility are on the table. Isuris and Gosha sit down with a restaurant owner, and he's so thankful for their help that he can hardly contain himself. Then he makes a proper, formal request. He pitches the idea that they sponsor his place, the Golden Sun, and you can practically see the adventurers freeze in shock at the sudden offer. The innkeeper makes it crystal clear this isn't just some cheap thanks for what they did before. This is a real, serious business offer. He lays it all out. He's chasing top-tier monster meat, determined to serve his patrons ingredients so good they'll blow every other shop out of the water. Joshua hesitates, scratching the back of his head as he admits their business is still barely breathing, and maybe they aren't ready to commit to all of this. She jumps in with infectious excitement, practically begging him to take the chance, because turning it down would be a complete tragedy. Melbus Aronia just watches, calm as ever, clocking how scary this fresh start might feel, yet reminding everyone that their real wish to back them should be met with open arms. With the road finally wide open, the whole crew locks in the partnership, trades heartfelt words of respect, and sets their sights on a future that's going to pay off big. He froze in the grand lobby of the Chaltros, spun around to face the woman who'd called him out, and the look on his face said it all. The words he had to speak felt like they dragged the weight of the world behind them. She leaned in as he fumbled for the right words, confessing he'd wanted to thank her for ages, only to admit he never found the courage to praise her performance until now. He stumbled over the perfect words, hands twitching with nerves, spilling his inner turmoil while she just watched, calm, gentle, and patiently locked in on him. With a sudden rush of sincerity, he confessed that her singing hit his soul hard, then thanked her from the bottom of his heart for how deeply her voice moved him. She took his praise like a warm spotlight, her smile flickering across her lips, and she promised she wouldn't stop, because singing gave her meaning the moment she felt that real connection with her audience. Right when they stood there together, everything got shattered when a young woman came barreling in, begging him not to leave her behind, her voice trembling with pure, frantic urgency. He turned toward the newcomer, and as the two women shared a warm, sisterly goodbye, he felt their guild's future glowing bright ahead. Beneath the evening sky, he stared out at the glowing grounds, replaying the wild gathering in his head and feeling deep gratitude toward Weiss for giving him the chance. He's left stunned by how intense she suddenly gets, wondering if his simple thank you was all it took to light that wildfire in her eyes. She lets her respect for her counterpart show, then shuts it down with a hard truth: we're rivals and I won't let you beat me. She tells him to stay on fire, then bam, she halts mid-sentence, yanked by something or someone lurking in the dark. They freeze in shock as this tiny, gear-stacked figure marches closer, then it hits them. It's Ryu right there in front of them. A thick, sudden tension snaps into the air as they face the worn-out traveler, every heart skipping a beat at that shocking, unexpected meeting. He leans in and, as he eyes the massive mechanical contraption Ryu's been dragging, focused concern hardens across his face. The story snaps down to the ground where a young, fox-eared girl lies collapsed, and everyone is left staring, desperate to figure out who she is and why she's been brought down like this. The farmer leans in over his fields, smiling like he just won the lottery because every crop has blown up into perfect growth. He snaps his gaze to the doorway, and a young girl with fox-like features tiptoes into the light, bracing for what's next. When he realizes she's awake, he tells her he dragged her to his place because he couldn't just abandon her, and she stares up at him, totally lost about where she is. She begs him to teach her how to float, and he freezes for a second, claiming that as a beastkin, she probably already knows more than he ever could, yet she won't back down, demanding his help anyway. He agrees to help, then lays down the rules first, telling her to start with the basic steps of the technique, and she jumps at the chance like she's been waiting for this. He tells her to shove against the air, and she instantly starts spinning, trying to nail that move. Right then, Gashu bursts in screaming that something's gone horribly wrong, and the girls freeze mid-practice, wide-eyed and shocked. She steps in and tells the audience, "I'm Roko," then thanks everyone for sticking around, while making it clear the others aren't here. Back at the table, she praises Gashu for how brilliantly he teaches, and even with all that praise, he stays humble about being a mentor. He remembers how her grandfather told him about the broadcast, blowing the young fox kid's mind wide open. She tells her that her grandfather spent his whole life studying ancient texts to perfect those techniques, but when it came time to teach them, he just couldn't make them click. She flashed a confident grin and bragged that she'd conquered the morning exercises with zero effort, then crowned herself a genius. She admits that while everyone else chases training, she showed up solo, because she refused to be a problem for anyone else. Suddenly, she drops into a deep bow and begs him to take her as a student. He just stands there stunned, trying to play it humble after the Shishinden school actually calls him out for recognition. He stared down at the young foxkin, and she wouldn't back off, still begging with all her heart to be accepted as a student in the Shishinden school. Still, he relented and promised to help her with anything he could, while clocking the strange, old-fashioned way she spoke. She froze mid-motion, snagged by this faint, old-school smell of mice that tugged at her memories, yet those strange thoughts left her more confused than comforted. He offered her a place to stay and told her point-blank that with his days running on farming, having her around would be a real help. The next day, the crew stormed out past the royal capital and into the endless, open grasslands. With a blazing, practiced grin, the adventurer kicked off their broadcast by introducing himself and his partner to the audience. The screen erupted with messages, fans were freaking out about seeing him, and everyone was buzzing over the fresh news about that sponsorship deal. He fired up the chat, thanking everyone for the love, then snapped the spotlight onto their special guest. Now the whole audience is on edge, craving answers. He beams as he unveils his new companion to the audience, and the chat explodes instantly, everyone shrieking, "She's so cute," while shock hits them for the surprise guest. She swings the focus back to the broadcast and warns them, "Rocco's just here to watch, so we've gotta jump back to our planned content right now or we'll never catch up to that earlier delay." She flicks her wrist like a showman and unveils today's challenge. She's prepping a massive chunk of boar meat, and just watching the sheer scale makes him groan in pure disbelief. She kicks off her stream, fires up the chat, and dares them with a brand new challenge. Then she dashes out to hunt ingredients so she can cook something incredible. She snaps out a bold claim, her target is the great boar, and right away the reviewers start freaking out, worried about how deadly those creatures are at a top-tier danger level. With a bright grin, she whips around to hype up the restaurant, urging her followers to run over and taste the flavors she just discovered. And as she gets back to the job, she spots the beast out in the distance, tearing through the local farmland like a storm. Her companion, Gashu, tightens his grip, flashes the signal, and gets the hunt underway. They're finally ready to follow through. That huge boar doesn't even notice them. It keeps nosing through the crops, rootling for food like it owns the place. Gasher squints, determination slamming into place as he decides the farm's destruction has to stop right now. He yanks his blade free and plants his feet, bracing to slam into that beast before it can tear through anything else. He steadied his stance, eyes nailed to that hulking beast, and braced to unleash a specialized technique. He exploded forward and slammed in a crushing strike, the impact tearing through the air like a thunderclap. He snapped into panic, yelling for the fox girl to run, too late because the creature was already on top of them and its massive weight crushed all hope. With a burst of shocking strength, the fox girl slammed in and intercepted the beast, freezing both him and the streamer in total disbelief at her raw power. As the dust finally cleared, the streamer blasted the incredible moment to her audience, her voice cracking with awe at the beastkin's secret power. He snapped an apology for the miscalculation, admitted the fox girl's strength shocked him, and laughed as he fed off the wild excitement from his viewers. They locked eyes in total confusion, still reeling from how brutal that encounter just was. The very next day, the streamer fired up the stream and told everyone she'd be cooking with the fox girl while he was gone. She slides over a huge hunk of boar meat, soaked in wine, then turns to the young fox girl and dares her to soften it with her bare hands. The girl blurts out an apology for the mess, but her companion only pats her head, telling her the meat chaos is exactly what they need for juicy hamburger patties, and the online crowd eats it up with laughs. Right as they're gearing up for the next step, the door bursts open. There's that familiar face again, snapping everyone's attention back so the broadcast doesn't miss a beat. Gashu bursts into his home and spots the chaos, his face snapping into alarm as he blurts out if someone's been attacked, only to be met with a wildly cheerful welcome. He leans in as they confess their cooking totally backfired, and their awkward grins give away the chaos they left on the floor. Online viewers can't stop laughing as they gush over the fox girl's help, then roast the streamer nonstop for her total cooking disasters. Even after all that chaos, the final dish hits hard, an all-meat minced patty piled with fresh vegetables, and somehow it looks downright irresistible. They slide into their seats together, dig into the meal, and feel the day's tension melt away as they chow down on the food they made during the stream. Once the meal was done and the broadcast finally cut out, he couldn't stop thinking about how hard the viewers were already loving the fox girl. Spent out from everything that happened that day, he calls it quits early and hands the cleanup off to the others. Before he leaves, he stops dead and watches the fox girl, spotting a weird flash of emotion on her face that absolutely doesn't match her usual vibe during the broadcast. She sat alone under the night sky, staring like the stars could answer her, until he finally stepped in and quietly smashed the silence. Beneath the full moon's glow, she finally confessed she'd been watching the moonlight all along, and he just nodded like he'd already been waiting to hear it. She spun toward him and blurted out that she needed to apologize for something, catching him off guard with how fast her tone flipped. 6 months ago, she started telling me how she stumbled onto a broadcast with him in it, and it hit her so hard it never faded. As she spoke, she spilled how seeing his spirit bonding up close cracked her world wide open, and for the first time she felt real, honest joy. Her face fell the moment she confessed she sent that comment during the broadcast, fueled by all the nasty opinions around her, and now she regretted it with her whole heart. She admitted that after it all, her grandfather chewed her out and drilled the lesson into her: you can't judge someone just by what they show on the surface. He leaned in, fully realizing her lesson: never, ever judge someone's real character just because they look a certain way on the surface. He leaned in and listened as she poured out how she'd rewatched his old broadcasts for countless hours, until it finally hit her like a light turning on. She told him she didn't come to brand him a villain. She came to see a man who uses his power to fight for what's right. Even after the change of heart, she admitted the guilt from her past actions still crushed her, so she couldn't look him in the eye or give him the apology he deserved. Regret crushed her to the core, and she collapsed into sobs, begging him for forgiveness through shaking tears. He met her gaze with a soft, honest look, and admitted that he still wrestled with the past decisions he'd made too. After his brutal clash with Asurus, he couldn't shake the regret. He'd swung with force instead of trying to understand, and it hit him hard. Real strength means facing people head-on, not backing down or brute-forcing your way through. She snapped her gaze upward, eyes blazing wide, and understood she couldn't dodge her mistakes anymore. She had to stand up and face them, courage in hand. He thanked her for the courage her honesty handed him, and when they finally locked eyes in mutual understanding, she pulled him into a hug, letting him breathe out and finding peace at last. He stayed there, calm beside his companion, until a voice he knew cut through the quiet and asked if she could join them. She confessed she'd been hunting him down just to talk about Rocco, and yeah, she'd planned to hit that exact subject from the start. They traded a tight, knowing glance, both of them locked in steady eye contact, silently carrying the same heavy worry for the young fox girl. She spun toward the girl, flashing a warm smile and inviting her to join the Golden Sun party. The young girl tilted her head up, eyes blazing with disbelief and hope, and barely managed to whisper, "Is it really okay?" Beneath the full moon's glow, the trio huddled on the rooftop, sharing one glance at the night sky, and a brand new bond sparked between them. Gashu sits across from an official and lays it all out about what happened with Roko, but when praise comes his way, he waves it off fast, claiming he didn't do anything unusual at all. The official admits it outright: this isn't some knee-jerk response to the kid's words. He chose to step up and take responsibility for Roko, and that choice came from real, honest resolve. He pours out heartfelt gratitude, amazed that meeting them unlocked the mind-blowing Shish and Enryu-style techniques he'd never truly learned before. The conversation pivots when he pushes Gashu to blast his school's name across the whole world, and you can literally see the adventurer lock in with fierce determination. Suddenly, the air turns heavy as he snaps the conversation shut, clearly rattled by something urgent that can't wait. He's left alone with his thoughts, wondering if he should warn Roko about the tricky parts of his martial arts, because the last thing he wants is to spark pointless worries in her. The very next night, he hooks up with Roko and the crew, then throws open the doors, promising an all-out tour of the Golden Sun base to welcome their brand new member. When they finally reached the massive facility, he clocked the dim lights and couldn't shake the question of why they'd come at this dead hour. Yet he kept moving, pushing straight toward the reception desk. He strode through the huge reception hall, talking like a tour guide, saying this place used to be a top-tier guild hangout, fully furnished, sprawling, and ready for anything. So yeah, it left him staring at the empty halls like, why did they ever walk away? Right beside him, the streamer lit up, saying the ghost sightings were stacking up fast. So tonight's stream wasn't just entertainment anymore, it was about to test their nerve. He clapped her enthusiasm down with a cool reality check. Yeah, rumors kept flying, but the association members who had actually stayed here overnight swore nothing weird ever happened. She admitted she hadn't seen a thing herself yet, but once she confessed the idea of a haunting lit a spark in her, she couldn't wait to go exploring. She strode into the conference room and dared to hope their night tour would finally expose the secrets hiding right inside those walls. Spotting the fox girl's sudden nerves, he flashed her a safe, reassuring smile and told her to relax before they headed for the cafeteria. A sudden, icy dread struck him like a ghost was hovering right behind his shoulder, and he let out a shaky, forced laugh to mask the fear. The chat went wild with warnings that something was stalking him, and when he spun around, a skeletal hand clawed out of the darkness and latched onto his arm. He jerks back in pure shock the instant that skeletal hand touches him, and his raw panic is broadcast live, so the crowd reads his real fear like it's part of a flawless act. The spectral entity keeps popping in and out of existence, and he can't tell what's real, because every time he tries to spot the invisible threat, it slips away again. Freaked out, he whips his eyes across the room, hunting the source of the disturbance, while the fox girl uses her razor-sharp senses to zero in on the entity by its scent. Chasing the mischief maker head-on, they charge after the shadow, completely clueless that the broadcast is streaming every second of their deadly pursuit. The chase drives them straight into a trap. Then a skeletal figure rockets out of the dark, lunging at the fox girl with a chilling, hollow grin. The floor rips open out of nowhere, and a startled scream bursts from her as a shadowy, spectral figure crawls out of the dark. Then her companion lunges in panic for her safety, only for her to stay calm and tell him she's completely unharmed. Through the wreckage, a treasure chest sits perfectly untouched, like the universe just dropped a mystery bomb in the middle of ruin. She thrusts her hand toward its chest, but the spectral thing rockets forward, snarling a terrifying warning, "Don't touch it." The air turns ice cold with tension as the spectral guardian's presence surges forward, crackling with a chilling, bone-deep energy. The spirit claws at her mind and demands the chest. Right now, its hollow eyes blazing with possessive fury. Panic hits hard as the whole group scrambles back, the spirit roaring at them to drop the treasure and get out, right now. Objects suddenly start getting ripped out of place and flying through the air in a furious poltergeist blast, making the adventurers scramble to brace themselves for the next hit. He steps forward and declares, loud and fearless, that they're getting the chest back, totally unharmed, before the restless spirit can cause any more trouble. He planted his feet like a wall, shoved his companions behind him, and barked, "Stay back from the chest," while steel hardened in his face. Swallowing his fear, he lunged to hand the chest back to the entity, only to have his fingers slip right through the spectral form like it wasn't even there. The spirit exploded into a brutal storm of fury, screaming that he'd been a fool, its hollow eyes blazing with pure, choking indignation. When he finally saw that fighting with his hands was pointless, he took the spirit's advice and used telekinesis to move the object, and then he awkwardly apologized for snapping at it earlier. With the tension finally easing, the spirit yanked a bottle from the chest and said it felt like a pretty solid thing to talk to. He let out a breath of pure relief. Somehow, the chest's contents had made it through the ordeal untouched. Blown apart by the chaos, he slammed the broadcast button and finally crashed into the rest he'd been craving. A ghostly guardian loomed over them and proclaimed itself the resident spirit of the place, then leaned in like, "All right, ask me anything you want." He pointed at the wrapped bundle and demanded what it was, and the spectral guardian finally told him. Those were the treasures he'd painstakingly hunted down for his wife waiting back home. The spirit kept going, saying he'd been stuck here since the moment he died, watching non-stop so nothing ever got stolen, though he admitted he'd been careless with the last people who lived here. Shock hit her like lightning when she realized the spirit had been watching them the whole time, tracking their broadcasts too. She accused him of invading their privacy, but he snapped back that they'd only have themselves to blame for how reckless they'd been before. Then he turned to the group and hit them with a sharp warning, "More shame, right now." And when he admitted it, he made it clear he had zero interest in human women. She leaned in, eyes narrowing and face changing as she weighed the spirit's chilling view of humanity. The spirit suddenly snapped her bony finger at him, shouting that she'd nailed exactly who he was, a beastkin. The skeletal figure lit up the moment he saw the beastkin again, but he admitted he couldn't leave his place. Still, he grinned and said he'd be generous enough to hand over a gift. She freezes, stunned by how effortlessly he hands over a treasure so precious. He argues that since she'll eventually be back home anyway, she should deliver the item straight to the family of the original owner. The young foxkin leaned in and demanded the family's name, her curiosity blazing the whole time. He snaps his hollow stare forward, then, like a door slamming shut, his memory suddenly goes blank. He admits the memories of his past life feel like they disappeared the moment he died, but he swears he'll share more the second he remembers anything else. He shifted his focus to a bottle of aged spirits and told her to hand it to an old man named Yagi, because this one needed a little more time to truly mature. He tells her straight up not to drink it herself, while the others stare, stunned by the kindness they never saw coming. She leans in, eyes locked on the adventurer as he admits he's worried about Yaga-san's sudden back pain, and that worry hits her like a wave. This is serious. The skeletal figure welcomes the whole crew with a warm grin, then needles the adventurer, like it's teasing him for the way times already started to catch up. She dips into a respectful bow, then hands the job to the foxskin, who snaps into place, nodding solemnly as he takes the responsibility. As she tells the tale of how she met that beast, the whole conversation swings toward the end, and it spikes the adventurer's curiosity about that mysterious person like nothing else. His eyes snap wide open, and the moment her words land, a sharp, sudden realization hits him like lightning. She clocks the tension in an instant. Yaga-san actually looks pleased, but she keeps her guard up because people always try to cash in on an old man's love for spirits. The foxskin locks eyes with the skeletal figure, her face dead still as her mind scrambles to make sense of the creepy encounter. She locks onto the skeletal hand, and the moment she sees it, recognition sparks in her head as her eyes latch onto that familiar bracelet. She grips the bracelet so tight her knuckles blanch, and a sharp gasp tears out of her when the truth finally hits. 5 days ago, the skeletal guardian sent them off with a chilling nod, and promised that the dormitory would be guarded so they could finally breathe easy. The next stretch of the journey is so brutal that only an S-rank adventurer can safely crack through those deadly dungeon gates. They stood there, fired up and fearless with their loyal companions at their sides, ready to slam headfirst into whatever came next. Sigurd strides up and trades greetings with the young foxskin, then introduces himself, testing the waters for a shaky alliance. With a wicked smirk, he basically says, bringing a kid into an S-rank dungeon, that's a wildly bold stroll for an A-rank adventure. The whole group drops into stunned silence, faces locked in icy shock at that shocking, unexpected discovery. The whole crew rides together in a horse-drawn carriage, rolling toward the forest as their journey kicks off. He demanded straight answers about their destination, the Laguna Forest, because he couldn't shake the thought that the broadcast might have named the wrong place. The adventurer blurts out that he's here to gather the plenty of flower, then immediately wonders if his companion truly gets how brutal the forest can be, because the look on their face says otherwise. He paints the forest as a deadly maze where the trees keep slipping and shifting, so every map turns to junk, and the dungeon's real truth stays locked away from every brave explorer who steps inside. Thumbing through a reference book, they trade shock-filled whispers about the plenty flower, how it vanishes and reappears in a new spot every year, and how everyone hunts it like gold because it's an insanely rare ingredient. They shift the talk to the flower's sweet nectar, and he can't stop dreaming about using it to whip up confections, still riding the high of how everyone loved his last food experiments. Seeing her hesitate, he jumps in to help with the next task, and she can't help but get momentarily distracted. There he is, standing in an apron. She stared, eyes blazing with anticipation as her companion tore through the guidebook like it was a lifeline, his brow knitting with worry as he found the grim warnings. Once you step into that forest, you don't escape. He proudly revealed the magical spider thread of heaven, swearing it would act like a rock-solid tether, so if they ever got lost, they could always pull their way back to the entrance. They turned to the battle-worn beast tamer and peppered him with questions about what really happened to him in the Laguna Forest, because they needed to know just how terrifying the road ahead was going to be. He told them, yeah, we've asked the fox girl to sniff out the threats, but don't panic. Our crew is strong enough to smash any beast that comes our way. He steadied his grip and tweaked his gear, admitting that yeah, he'd love to catalog every creature in those woods. But the truth is, the job still felt brutally daunting. The veteran snapped at them not to underestimate the forest's inhabitants, saying even monsters they've seen before can turn unpredictable the moment they're in their own turf. Then he gave them a confident nod, reminding them they're more than ready as high-ranking adventurers. The carriage slammed to a gritty stop, and right then they knew they'd reached the edge of those mysterious, shifting woods. They stood shoulder to shoulder before a glowing, magical seal carved into the ancient trees, and the forest's gate was finally open, just begging them to step into the unknown. She stood shoulder to shoulder with her crew while the veteran beast tamer swore he'd stay posted at the entrance, just like he always had. He shot them one last, tired smile, admitting this mission was a beast, and made it clear he'd escort them out. With one calm wave, he urged them forward, betting everything on their own way of steering through what came next. The leader snapped his gaze to his party, grit setting into his face as he thundered that it was time to push forward. They stride straight for the shimmering vertical rift. The doorway to the forest is already wide open, like it's been waiting for them. As soon as they crossed the threshold, the whole group slipped into the thick, ancient jungle and vanished, leaving the life they knew far behind. The road ahead vanished into the unknown, swallowed by silence, an untamed trail crawling deeper into the ever-changing woods. The charming streamer beams at her viewers and cheers, "We made it to the Lagna Forest," then kicks off another can't-miss broadcast. She breaks down their mission, hunts for the elusive Printy of Flower, and reveals it only blooms inside this exact S-rank dungeon. Suddenly, she spots a treasure chest wedged in the roots and blurts, "Look," as she whips her friends over to it. While her crew argues over whether it's a mimic, she grins and flips it into a fun game for her viewers. "Alright, guess what's inside." She boldly says she won't drop it like everyone else. She's going to dig into it, and her whole team braces in fear. She doesn't hesitate, she slams her strike into the chest, and that wooden container immediately morphs into a vicious, snapping mimic. When the creature rockets in for a lunge, she throws back a laugh, because she nailed the prediction, while her companions scramble to shield themselves from the sudden onslaught. The group braces themselves in the thick, ancient forest, right where the shadows hide the dangers waiting to strike. She leans in, eyes wide, and studies the weird, bulbous plants like she's never seen anything like them before, while her companion grumbles that these mountain vegetables are downright strange. The group stops in their tracks and the air hits them like a wave of nostalgia, making them wonder, right then, how everyone back in their village is holding up. A sudden, gut-punching shriek rips through the calm, and the fox girl and her partner jolt in shock on the spot. Under their feet, the ground suddenly shudders and slides apart, and they realize, too late, that they just stumbled straight into a hidden spider's nest. She's completely caught off guard, then a jolt of confusion bursts out of her as dark shadows slither forward, sticky tendrils whipping out to grab and trap her. They thrash in desperation as the vines cinch tighter and tighter, dragging the fox girl and her companion deeper into the trap they can't break free of. A monstrous predatory scheme blossoms open, and once those petals peel back, a nasty B-rank menace starts wrapping around its victim, craving blood. Panic hits hard as they scramble to escape, but those vines don't quit, so they yank their weapons out in a desperate life-or-death scramble. She frantically screams at her crew to bolt now, her voice slicing through the fear as that colossal, tooth-studded monstrosity looms over them. In the middle of the chaos, she screams for help, staring at the creature and asking if it's really just a plant, because deep down, she knows it's something way darker. With a violent snap, the predator's moss flings wide, and suddenly those rows of jagged, needle-like teeth come screaming into view. Right when the plant is about to lunge, he digs in and refuses to move, arm shooting out as he gets ready to unleash his specialized technique. He lunges in hard, pours every ounce of power into one brutal swing, yells the name of his technique, and goes straight for the plant's hole, trying to tear it apart. The adventurer snaps at his companion to get her weapon up, swearing monsters are lurking in the shadows, and she quickly apologizes, admitting she never even sensed it. Right nearby, the fox girl watches it all, and she can't shake the feeling that the girl's face is wearing an almost deliberate, provocative smirk. He keeps rolling on with his broadcast, saying these monsters are way too brutal to face head-on, but hey, at least he gets to watch the wild scenery safely from home. They halt in the suffocating forest, fists clenched, because no matter how far they push, that elusive pretty flower still refuses to show up. The fox girl claims that this flower soaks up tons of sunlight and somehow stores sweet nectar, but she admits she can't prove it unless she takes the risk and literally flies up to check. She tells him to just toss her up so he can see better, but he shuts that down instantly. Too risky, no way. She ignores his warning and rockets into the air by herself, hunting the scent of the nectar while he stands there watching, still getting nothing. Suddenly, she sniffs something sweet and faint, her eyes lighting up as she points like she's found a secret, so he rushes in to track down the source. They stumble on a whole cluster of lacuna goblins and lacuna mushrooms, thriving like they own the clear. She stood in the thick forest, staring down those lacuna goblins as they pressed in from every side, and when she realized they'd trapped the group with nowhere to run, dread hit her hard. Arrows screamed through the air from every angle, and he panicked, swinging his massive blade in one desperate wide arc just to knock the barrages aside. He roared for her to duck behind the huge tree, certain those arrows couldn't touch her up there, and she snapped into action with a sharp, no-nonsense nod. The warriors swept the perimeter, and when he saw those monsters waiting out there, his brow snapped tight. Charging them head-on was a dead end, so he had to invent a new move to smash this stalemate. Suddenly, the earth under her crumbled, and she crashed into the undergrowth with a brutal thud, confusion spiking fast as she realized something was terribly off. He spun toward the crash, eyes snapping wide as his companion plummeted straight into the ground, and his voice choked up as he shouted her name. The fox girl stared from her hiding spot, ears twitching in pure shock as both her companions vanished in an instant. Just like that, leaving her stranded, scrambling to figure out what on earth had happened. She shut her eyes, regret crashing over her, and it hit her. She should have spotted the danger the instant her companion bolted. She perches on a high branch, safe from harm, watching the wagon roll deeper into the mushroom-choked forest, completely clueless about the deadly danger hiding under the ground. Asura stares at his fallen companions and grimly realizes they didn't just fall, they got knocked out by toxic spores. He snaps out a warning. Those spores freeze the body, but the lacuna goblins shrug off the poison and could swarm them any second. The fox girl stays up there, perched high, eyes blazing with fear and cold calculation as she weighs her next move. Then she murmurs, "All right, so what do you do now?" Now the whole group stays on edge, shoving each other to wake up fast, praying the fox girl is okay even though she's vanished from the broadcast. Dread claws at him as he realizes the streamer is the only one who knows that technique, which means pulling the fox girl out of this mess is almost impossible. Locked in, he snaps into action and shouts at his companion, "We've got to rescue everyone right now before it's too late." The adventurer stares at the brutal truth of the mission and realizes this. If they get wiped out, that's all they were ever capable of. He grabs his comrade and yanks him up, dead set on facing the confrontation that's rushing at them. With a strained grunt, he hefts his massive blade, finally breathing out, because the moment to strike back is here. He digs deep into his last sliver of strength and realizes he can still drag his body forward, even as crushing pressure tries to stop him cold. As the creature rockets forward, dread crashes into him. His defenses might not be quick enough to stop that strike. He lunges ahead, blade whistling through the air as he tries to cut down those thick, squirming tendrils and snare the fox girl in the process. Her grip cinches harder, and dread claws up her throat as she realizes that if she drops any deeper, that same parasitic force will swallow her whole. Struggling to keep her cool, she feels her body lock up. Her strength drains away, and even her broadcast gear won't budge. A brutal slurping sound rips through the air, and she chokes on a gasp as a thick, dark gelatin starts dripping onto her. A deadly parasite ranked as Laguna amoeba slithers around her, and as it moves, the hidden crowd behind the feed throws out mocking commentary. She screams as the creature sucks the life out of her, yanking her vitality straight into that glowing, translucent mass like it's drinking her soul. Seeing the disaster unfold, the crowd trades grim looks and harsher words. Someone flat out says this might be the final stretch of their journey. They break down the threat in seconds, watching the Laguna amoeba siphon her life drop by drop, and realize it'll take a full day to completely drain her dry. She's still stuck there, and while she's trapped, an adventurer leans in and challenges the panic, pushing the idea that there's still time to strike back. He lunges forward, screaming at the creature to let go, and his voice slices straight through the tension as he's ready to step in. The strike totally misses. No matter how hard he hits, it won't cut the link because the parasite's grip is just too strong. With desperation blazing in her eyes, she realizes she has to rip out that amoeba right now, before her companion dies. He surges forward, ripping through the dust and crackling energy like a spinning cyclone, trying to wrench that entity loose. A sudden spark hits her. If she copies that vine-like movement she just saw, she can whip up a tornado without ever touching the ground. They lock eyes and everything clicks in silence. Then she snaps her command and orders the execution of the Great Wheel technique. She snaps into rapid spin, her body turning into a streak of motion as the technique locks in, and a savage cyclone roars to life. She managed to wrench the amoeba loose and watched that ugly dark mass get blasted away, drained but finally relieved. Then she checked on the streamer and he said the numbness was still there, but she could move again. Their attention snapped to the area next, because when they looked around, their companion was gone, vanished out of sight. Gashel rockets into the chaos, blade blazing overhead as he drops onto the jagged mountain ground to smash the encroaching threat. He unleashes the Sheridan Isin, lightning precise, ripping through the air to slam into the surrounding foes and take them down. When the chaos erupts, the streamer begs him to come back, and the fox girl calmly says the truth. No one but him can fend off an attack that comes from every direction. The young fox girl hits the ground with a solid thud, her body snapping into a battle-ready stance as she braces for the next wave of combat. A fiery blast erupts from the ground as she slams up a defensive barrier, snapping at her opponent for letting their focus slip in the middle of the chaos. In the blink of an eye, the fox girl disappears without a trace, and her companion is left frozen, scrambling, scanning, and hunting for where she went. A brutal punch lands on something you can't even see, and the shockwave blasts through the air, instantly tearing the silence apart. She stands in the fading dust, arms still blazing from the moment she blasted the attackers back with pure, explosive force. She drops a decisive hit, smooth as silk, and wipes out the last threats in one swift strike. With a proud nod toward her performance, he snaps his attention to the streamer, and she instantly reassures everyone she's completely unharmed and locked in, recording every heroic move for her audience. Once the threat finally eased, he snapped into action, signaling a counterattack as his resolve locked in, ready to surge forward. He strides forward, eyes scanning the quiet forest, and finally realizes the skirmish is over. Now the whole area hangs in deadly, tense silence. She blurts out an apology for hesitating, and right then he tells her to pause, go over their gear and skills together so they're ready for whatever's coming next. The streamer faces her viewers and cuts the broadcast for a quick intermission, so the party can catch their breath, regroup, and hit back even stronger. The forest quiets down to a haunting stillness as the crew finally snatches a rare breath of peace. She basked in the canopy's gentle, filtered glow, catching a rare breath of peace, then waded into the shallow water, letting the cool current rinse away every last trace of the fight they'd just survived. Along the bank, her companions sprawl and catch their breath. One groans that the sticky stuff left on their skin is unbearable, and the other snaps that they can't let their guard down for even a second. He whips his focus to the fox-eared girl and praises how deadly her earth barrier skills were, then grins. What if that same technique could be remade to clear paths through the fields? As the chat keeps rolling, the streamer swivels to the incoming broadcast comments, and the second her eyes hit the screen, her smile drops into sharp, instant alarm. The streamer is locked into her broadcast and she can't believe it. Her own commentary is sparking more hype than anything her friends are doing. She pauses, her eyes drifting down to a tiny opening in the ground, curiosity sparking as she spots the hidden hollow. Her voice snaps with panic as she points at the creature. Those wounds are gone just like that, and her companions scramble over, baffled and shouting questions. Shocked by how fast she healed, they decide to grab samples for deeper investigation, even as everyone urges her to get dressed properly. They scan the forest below and their worry hit hard. Something in the landscape had shifted since they last saw it from above. To carve a way through the choking brush, one of them screams for brute force, wrecking everything like a giant boar tearing in. He challenges the whole idea of climbing with spider silk because it's scarce, ridiculously expensive, and just doesn't add up, yet she stays upbeat, convinced their sky route will work. Deep in the woods, the fox girl stops cold, senses prickling at the air, and forces herself to keep going, because the unknown feels like it's about to strike. She shot forward, shouting for her companion to keep up, just as they stumbled onto the glowing hidden cavern entrance. They dropped to their knees before a strange patch of rare, sweet-smelling flowers, stunned by their incredible find. The young fox girl grinned like she'd just won the world, soaking up every compliment for her sharp senses and that perfect, hard-earned find. She gently pulled the plant free and talked me through the careful root-preserving method, determined to keep every drop of nectar untouched. Once the specimen was locked down, she smiled and said this was only the opening move in a bigger plan she'd been broadcasting. She burst with excitement and mapped out the next move, using the nectar they'd collected to bake sweet treats right on camera, while her companion just looked worn out and amused. Suddenly, the ground crumbled under their feet, and her companion lurched forward straight into a hidden pit. She froze in place, ears twitching as a horrifying presence crawled up from the earth's depths. She feels the danger hit first, before the ground even twitches, and she screams a warning as the earth rips open and violently breaks beneath them. He barks an order for everyone to scatter on the spot, yanks his heavy blade free, and slams it into the shifting ground to pin himself before the whole earth throws him around. The ground rips open and he jerks back in pure shock as a towering, armored monster lunges out of the earth. Then he can't stop wondering how something that monstrous was even hiding in these woods. Hovering over him, a hulking worm-like monster looms, its jagged maw dripping with shine as it readies a deadly strike. A gigantic monster rockets forward, its jaws snapping like a death trap as the adventurer snaps his blade up to clash with the attack. The blade slammed into the beast's hide, but it might as well have been stone. Pain lanced through him, so he jerked back just to make sure his companion was still safe. They label the threat a sandworm, an infamous desert predator that swallows whole merchant caravans in one brutal gulp. With flowers printing finally locked in, he shoves the whole group forward. Go now, escape before this chance slips away. She yells for him to stop, and panic flashes across her face like a warning light. That danger is crystal clear. If nobody stops it, the creature will march straight out of the desert and move into places people actually live, like the forest and the town. Panic explodes among the onlookers as the massive worm looms over the settlement, and desperate voices scream that this is no moment for jokes. He clamps both hands around his sword, steels himself to hold the line and crush the beast on the spot. Then the fox girl steps forward, ready to help. He stood there in stunned silence, staring at the chaos in front of him, trying to figure out whether the others were about to step in. A colossal sandworm surged into view, its massive bulk crushing everything around it. Then he realized it was only a juvenile, and it had come straight to the oasis because other creatures were there. Nearby, the streamer snapped that sitting still was madness, because watching from the shadows would expose them anyway, and once the world noticed, it would drag them straight into the fight. He nodded to her argument, admitting that if they were going to help, they needed to do it straight up, and that jumping into a fight with a monster was scary but not a deal-breaker. With a calm, unshakable stare, he made it clear he wasn't leaving the town for a second, and the others deserved to take on the challenge their own way. The fox girl shot into place, a streak of motion as she braced herself to draw the gargantuan beast's attention away. He lunged in, blade slamming into the creature's hide. Nothing. Then it hit him. He had to copy the technique he once used to shatter a golem, while the fox girl kept the opening wide enough for him to strike. The earth shook hard as the worm lined up its counterattack, and he screamed a desperate warning to his allies to brace for the hit coming at them. He tightened his stance as the sandworm erupted, an earth-shaking, blinding blast blasting straight from its maw, the raw power ripping through the air like it was going to tear the sky open. The adventurer barely dodged that devastating beam, launching into the air just as the creature's non-stop attacks pulverized the ground where he'd been seconds ago. All of it when she saw the beast's crushing power. The fox girl screamed in terror, swearing they stood no chance and that the only way to survive was to retreat. The beast bursts up from the ground and hurls out a brutal, high-pressure wave of sand that rips through everything in its path, and Asuras just watches the wreckage like, That attack can smash stone and tear through force. This thing is terrifying. He hunts for an opening, but his blade keeps falling short as the beast sinks under the earth, deeper and deeper, and frustration crashes in when he finally grasps just how well it's hidden. The monster slams in for another lunge and he whips aside just in time, Missouri's yelling "heads up!" as she spots its hit-and-run rhythm, warning him to stay sharp for the instant it coils its power for the next brutal strike. She slams herself against a tree, eyes blazing as she watches the battlefield explode, while her scattered supplies sit inches away. As the dust finally clears, she spots dainty petals floating through the air, one beautiful flower perfectly still, while all that chaos is still roaring around her. The earth tears open under her feet, and the beast's massive jaws slam shut just inches from her face. He lunges into the fight, smashes through the creature's attack in mid-swing to shield her, and drives his blade clean through the monster's hide. The beast jerks back hurt, and as it glares, he tells you the reason. He studied the creature's habit of flashing its belly mid-attack, then baited it just long enough to slam in the final, decisive hit. He realized one brutal, perfectly aimed punch into the creature's underbelly would end it for good. As the dust finally settled, the whole group let out easy laughs until one guy grinned and said, "Yep, battle's over, now it's bath time." They stayed on high alert, even with the jokes flying, because this situation was anything but calm. He frowned hard, his brow knotted as he finally admitted their current plan wouldn't let them strike back properly. He whirled on his companions and demanded how they could ever shove that beast out of the sky while it stayed airborne. Because how were they even supposed to land the hit without any solid ground to stand on? She chimed in and demanded stronger force, and her buddy just teased her with a grin, praising her sharp insight. The fox girl tightened her grip, struck a defensive stance, and fired up, ready to unleash the plan. Out of nowhere, the monster dove from above and drove him to react on the spot. Its crash shattered the ground, cracked the earth wide open, and tore everything down into a huge, yawning abyss, so he braced as the dirt split and fell away beneath him. Then a giant creature sprang up from the forest floor, and the adventurer yelped in shock because the jump was so high it completely caught him off guard. In the next breath, the fox girl clenched her battered body and grimaced through the pain, pushing her companion to move faster as she finally clocked how deadly this situation really was. He braces himself with his blade as the streamer sneers that spider silk is way too tough to slice with normal tricks, even if a whole group jumps in. The adventurer yells for her to grab the fox girl and flee to safety, while he hurls himself into summoning the spirit's power and pouring it into his weapon. She seethes as the fight explodes in front of her, cursing the distance because it keeps her from grabbing the best shots for her broadcast. Right as she's about to breathe, her interface snaps into a split screen and she freezes, because the viewers explode in the chat with non-stop questions about what the heck just happened. The broadcast finally makes the aerial fight crystal clear, and she immediately whips the crowd into a roar, begging everyone to cheer as the adventurer battles high above the ground. He rockets into the sky and whips his blade through the air, unloading a crushing move, ready to end the beast with one clean, decisive strike. He stares as the massive creature finally crumples to the ground, its terror wiped out by that brutal, decisive hit. She whips back to her audience, grinning like she just won the lottery, proudly showing off the rare flowers they snagged, while that defeated beast drops dead behind her. They traded stories about the ride back, wondering if someone would finally be there to meet them, while realizing their path was brutal now that the spider's silk they'd relied on was gone. The beast tamer flashes a reassuring smile at the group, admitting how drained everyone is, and how the terrifying job is finally over and they can finally breathe. Meanwhile, the broadcast storms into the Adventurer Association and officials huddle over the footage, eyes locked, ready to dive into whatever chaos is unfolding in that forest. He lays out how serious this is, saying there's no way they can ignore a creature like that in the forest, and that they're going to have to write up a proper, official report of what happened. The whole crew locks onto the plan and pushes forward with fire in their hearts, ready to step in and face the wreckage of their battle. He stares at the fallen beast, heart racing, wondering if they just stumbled into this, or if something bigger and far more calculated lured them here. The morning starts the same way it always does, tired farm hands rushing to tend the crops, while the calm sun rises over everything in silence. He can't believe how this wild turn of events landed him here, 3 straight days stuck in this live broadcast life, and somehow he's even having to lean on other people just to keep the vegetable garden going. He freezes when he sees it. Every last vegetable has withered away, and the shock hits him so hard he can't even think. Frustration crushes him. No matter how many times he waters the crops morning and night, they still fail, and now he can't even leave the inn to fix it. The crushing weight of failure slams into him, and his shoulders drop as he gapes at the ruined harvest, unable to believe his eyes. She closes the distance, pushes a vial of water into his hands, and dares him to drink it, just to see if it'll fix what's going wrong. The second the water kisses the soil, something unreal happens. Those dead, withered veggies suddenly puff back up and burst into life at lightning speed. He freezes in awe at the rebuilt crop, realizing the water comes straight from the forest's like pure healing power, and he turns to her and thanks her for saving him at the perfect moment. He watched her inspect the vial of water, and there was no denying it. Something mysterious and dangerously powerful pulsed inside, the same energy the scouting party had already felt. She urged them to use that water right away, swearing it could even level up the taste of their cooking. With a sudden burst of raw power, she blasted the crops with a wave of water, and he just stood there, completely stunned by how ferocious it was. She swung around to him with a dazzling grin and said they were still running low on supplies, so they'd have to head back to the lake and grab more. Moments later, she faced her crowd and fired up the room. This was a new challenge. They weren't going home until they wiped out 500 field monsters. The fields have been overrun by a roaring swarm of Gimmer riders, so nobody can even get near the crops without getting torn apart. She told him they were helping the farm owner with the harvest while also hunting the pests, and she couldn't resist teasing him for wearing that way too enthusiastic grin. He seized control, barking orders for her to wipe out the Gime riders without scarring a single grain, while he tore into the fields to harvest the crops himself. He flashed the signal that he was ready, and the fox-eared girl beside him snapped her head up and barked a crisp confirmation, shoulders tight, eyes sharp, fully locked in for what came next. With one smooth flick, he unleashed the butterfly dance, and his blade slashed through the air right as a hulking chitinous insect burst out of the crops, mandibles clicking like a threat on a deadly beat. Staring up at the creature's massive bulk, he let out a grim smirk, because it didn't run at all. It charged straight for them, and that move landed exactly in his favor. When he stepped into the swarm, he finally saw it. This infestation was way bigger than their estimate of 500, and he couldn't help but note they were like moths, ripping toward a scorching summer sign. With the danger wiped out for good, he wiped his brow, flashed a quick signal to his crew, and urged them, and you, to keep watching as they turned their eyes to the harvest and pushed forward. The fox-eared girl stares at the monstrous thing and realizes its body and rage have both ramped up, just like the horrifying omen from before. She snaps back at the strange spike in crop growth, remembering how the landowner swore the cultivation area stayed exactly the same. She jabs her finger at the stalks and yells at her companion to stare at that wild new development up close. The soil gives off a weird, unmistakable smell, and she realizes the grain has shot past its harvest time, while the reports rolling in confirm monsters are suddenly rampaging nearby. The next day, they rush to tell the guild what they found, scouring the fields one last time before they finally head out. The next day, they burst into the guild, and the Golden Sun members greet them with open arms and big smiles. The streamer drops the official report, and one thing jumps out: this recruitment drive crushed it. She winks and suggests tea later, dragging the foxier girl along too. Then the reminder hits fast: time to lock in and get back to work. She faced the guild official, and the second the truth hit, her excitement snapped into shock, eyes going wide in an instant. The guild staff stayed perfectly professional as they praised how fast and efficient the crew was, yet the fox-eared girl beside her suddenly felt the mood sour into something heavy. Without even blinking, she snapped around and took off running, her boots pounding the floor as she sprinted off to handle the emergency that just erupted. She jolted forward with frantic urgency, barking the new orders to her companion: no autographs at all, straight to the second-floor office right now. When she finally arrived, she slammed her fist against the door, pulse pounding as she steeled herself to step into the room where the top officials were waiting. Inside, she froze when a familiar face stared back at her, Melbus lounging like he belonged there, until the shock hit and she burst out in a surprised exclamation. A sharp-looking man stepped forward with elegant confidence, introduced himself as Kate Almond, the Guild Association president. He motioned them to sit, his voice cutting straight to the point, and demanded a full rundown of the reports they'd brought, because the time for small talk was officially over. She listened closely as the man in front of her said he'd just gotten the same report from the Adventurer Association president, Bijan. He kept going, saying Melbus, the top-ranked streamer, had been begging his viewers to stay sharp and take extra care in those exact areas. The talk snapped to what was happening right now. Monster numbers had suddenly spiked, and the Graham region was buzzing with weird activity. He dragged his finger across the map and told everyone straight up, those adventurers he sent out to different places weren't just finding monsters, the weird anomalies showed up everywhere too. He pointed out that the crops around here were growing all wrong too, twisted, abnormal growth that he traced to the Senos River's waters, fed by far-off mountains and carried straight to the sea, keeping the area's farms alive. He paused, took it all in, and told them to hold up for a second, because the weight of what he just uncovered hit him like a truck. Then he pulled out a sample and crushed everyone with the results. Water from a tributary of the Senos River near the Lagna forest was analyzed, and a troubling component turned up. The truth hit like a punch. The water had traces of black sealing stone, an ancient artifact that was used back in the days before broadcast culture even existed to trap terrifying monsters. She lays it all out in blunt terms. The mess in the Sinals River isn't random, it almost certainly traces back to a black sealing stone upstream, quietly bleeding out magical energy. Her eyes fly wide when the truth hits. Those monsters trapped in the stone are finally waking up. She clenches her fist, eyes sharpening with grim resolve, and makes it clear they're forming a survey team to hunt down these ancient threats before they can ever crawl back again, no matter what it costs. The adventurer declares he's heading to the upper village tomorrow, and he looks over like, "Wanna come with me on the expedition?" They nod and agree, because with a local guide in their corner, the investigation will run smooth as silk. He leans in and asks if he can bring his companions too, swearing they won't slow him down one bit. The guild rep beams and tells him once those black stones are found, we'll run them just like the dungeons, then raises a hand to call a sudden pause mid-talk. She asks whether she can air the investigation to the world, as long as they keep their location locked down and don't stir up any trouble. Records uncovered that multiple black stones exist, so we'll need solid visuals documented for anyone to reference later. He nods in agreement, says spreading the message to the masses will do real good, and practically welcomes the collaboration with open arms. He leans in hard as the talk shifts to sharing the truth about how deadly this disaster could be, and everyone else hammers the same point. No fear-mongering, no panic for no reason. As the briefing rolls on, he points out how the golden sun shields people from monsters, and says we have to spread that truth or the whole public is doomed. The whole crew erupts in excited agreement, their voices swelling into a thunderous chorus as they gear up for what's next. Elsewhere, an empty glass sat waiting, every last drop drained, while the patron at the bar swallowed his frustration in silence. The patron snaps for one more round, his voice slicing right through the still, quiet air like a blade. Rage detonates in him out of nowhere. He snaps, curses his fate, and rages at how totally unfair everything feels. Still seething, he glares at a document demanding compensation for damages, frustration spiking as he weighs severing ties for good. With the tension still sizzling in the air, a broadcast suddenly cuts in. Melbus shows up on screen, and he looks ready to drop a massive announcement to everyone. She stayed on air, blasting a warning that the monster horde in the Graham region had exploded in size, and begged everyone, if you spot a big, dark stone, don't wait, call the Adventurer Association right away. In the tavern, everyone leaned in and whispered about the broadcast, convinced that the guy with the massive sword could slice through any monster and keep them all safe. They snapped their heads toward the hooded stranger, trying to figure out who he really was, and what kind of monster weapon he was hauling in that heavy grip. Suddenly, the tavern keeper slammed his palm onto the counter and demanded, through a voice choking with rage, what that stranger had done to his regular customer. The hooded man backed into the street, snarling curses through his teeth, while fury kept swelling as he finally realized they were tossing him out. He froze mid-step, eyes snapping wide with sudden clarity as he spotted a crew of adventurers hanging nearby. Right nearby, the team huddled up and split the plan. One member swore they'd investigate the Blackstone while the other focused on keeping the vegetable crops growing. From the shadows, the hooded man stared into the dark, weighing every rumor about the Black Stone and every scary tale of monsters trapped inside, praying the streamer's words were more than just hype. He smirked as everything clicked into place: Elbas's broadcast, the spike in monster attacks, and his deep dive into the Black Stone's investigation. Fists clenched with pure anticipation, he hissed a grim promise. Gashu would pay for every last humiliation he'd been forced to swallow. 3 days after they took off, the crew closes in on Maslif, filled with buzz and nerves because their return is about to unleash a whole new wave of change. They can't sit still, buzzing with worry. Are the others okay, and do they really have enough time to get ready before the investigation kicks off? Suddenly, the air turns thick and suffocating as a flame dragon dives down on them, its blazing presence barking, "Look at me right now." He demands everyone stay inside the carriage for safety. Then he steps out himself to face the danger, ready to stop those hunters from getting in the way of his duty. The beast unleashes a thunderous roar, its towering body swallowing the village as he freezes in horror, terrified for every villager's life. As the creature lunges, an A-rank adventurer rockets in and slashes, blade screeching as it collides with the monster's hide, only to freeze when he realizes the thing's body is ridiculously tough. As the chaos spikes, a dread wyvern swoops in, spiraling overhead with deadly intent. He whips around to face the grandmother, handing her the defense like it's her turn to shine, and she nods, calm as ever, gripping her weapon with smooth, battle-tested precision. He can't believe his eyes as those monster jaws clamp shut in a brutal instant, and the sheer scale of the threat freezes him and his companions in shock. They snap into action at once, screaming for everyone to stand their ground as the beast's brutal pressure slams down on them, while a wyvern wheels high overhead. Bracing against the creature's crushing weight, the defenders stagger, fighting to keep their footing as they realize this showdown is going to drain them down to the bone. Just as a warning cry snaps through the air, a colossal, spiked tail whips in like a death trap, tearing past the cod it was meant to crush. As chaos rips through the scene, they shoot each other worried looks, because the monster's behavior has totally flipped and they can feel it. With a ruthless swing, the crushing hit lands and the bees flinch back because the skirmish's momentum finally flips. They stare up, stunned as the creature suddenly wobbles and its rage just collapses, so abrupt it leaves them completely dumbfounded. Up in the sky above the battlefield, a mysterious power erupts, glowing in thin, ethereal light and slamming a seal onto the dragon, trapping it while sheer, overwhelming energy pours out. He stands in the ruins, scanning his companions as they claw their way back from that brutal fight, and when they start praising him, he shuts it down, because he admits with a shake of his head that he should have handled it better with more finesse. As the danger starts to fade, the crowd rumbles back to life. Then an official voice slices through the chatter, saying the area's safe now and they can finally head to the village without fear. With the danger crushed, he pivots straight to the battlefield loot, barking orders for the crew to haul that massive beast back, because the feast is about to begin. A comrade laughs at his gloomy face, saying even a legendary adventurer shouldn't look that crushed, and he fires back that maybe they're just tougher than they look. Then he straight up warns his friend not to get carried away. The whole crew huddles up, and that brutal fight tension finally snaps into relief the moment they're welcomed back with open arms. Tucked under those towering mountains, the village sleeps soundly, totally unaware that a narrow escape just slammed down at their doorstep. The whole crew hoists their wooden mugs to the sky, shouting a wild toast as they thunder the air, celebrating Gashu's triumphant return home. He waves off the teasing with a grin, saying the juice is saved for tomorrow, and then everyone starts joking that he and his companion look exactly like a married couple. She sits nearby, savoring every bite, while the villagers stare and whisper that she looks exactly like Gosha's daughter. That shy young fox girl suddenly darts in close, begging a woman to take her as an apprentice so she can learn how to crush monsters, until the woman shuts her down and makes it clear she'll have to forge her physical strength first. He shifts his focus to Sigurd, flashing pure relief, and making it clear how grateful he is that someone with that kind of knowledge is joining the investigation team. The talk snaps to what's happening tomorrow, and they lock in their plan, bring the others too for that meeting with the village chief. A heavy, grim silence drops over the table as they whisper about something terrifying hiding just outside the village. He ends the talk by telling the villagers to stay locked inside the village lines until the investigation wraps up, praying they can dodge any extra chaos. He stood at the window like a statue, locked on his plan to hunt the black stone drifting down the river at dawn, because he knew the night's dangers would make any rush immediately deadly. He spun back to his crew and handed out glowing vials that breathed like captured spirits, making sure every single one of them was ready to face the darkness looming ahead. Once everything was set, he waved the group down and told them to finally rest, because the work for the day was officially done. An unexpected suggestion hit like a lightning bolt. This young fox girl would crash at their place for the night, and he froze, stunned for a moment. He leaned in with his brow cranked tight in confusion, grilling her on what she really meant by spending the night this close. Then the explanation rolled on, and when the local inn was packed to the brim, they had no choice but to squeeze her into their own place. He can only blurt out a stunned, confused gasp, trying to wrap his mind around how fast their whole living situation flipped. Outside, the little cabin's latch snaps into place, locking the quiet house in place as the night crawls deeper. He pointed at the bed and told his guest to take it, promising he'd find somewhere else to sleep, his voice steel but not unkind. She folded her hands, flashed a calm, reassuring smile, and said sharing the room was totally fine. His face ignited into a deep crimson, and the sudden proposal hit him so hard he couldn't even brace himself. The tiny space forced them into each other's pockets, and he stammered about how there was barely any room, while she stayed blissfully clueless as his anxiety kept surging. With a heavy sigh, he gave in to the arrangement, because time was slipping away fast and their plans were running out. They finally dropped into their seats, and the whole crew leaned in, buzzing about the next expedition and trading rumors about the Blackstone. A chilling legend finally surfaced, ancient monsters so horrifying that even the toughest warriors would feel fear clawing at their hearts just from seeing them. He leaned in, brows knotted, and demanded to know how anyone before them ever held their ground against that crushing, unstoppable power. The elder sat there, staring into the void, saying fighting demons isn't something your brain can map. It's beyond imagination itself. He said the Shenzhen Ryu style hinges on a deadly hidden technique, calling the spirits of heaven and earth to pour straight into your body. Gashu stared in tight focus, brow knotted as he tried to wrap his mind around the massive power behind the Genbu technique. The elder admitted he could only sketch the basics, but he was sure Gashu had what it took to master the Genbu. Moments later, the two adventurers split up for the night, trading quick goodbyes before they crashed and got some rest. As he started to head out, the fox girl froze in place. Then her cheeks blazed with embarrassment when she finally remembered she'd left something important behind. She flicked a blinding glow into existence to light their way, and Gashu snapped his head back, stunned by the sudden illumination. Gasha beamed with gratitude, thanked her for the help, and urged her to keep going side by side as they hit the road together. He leans in as his companion talks up his wild, rare gift, being able to commune with spirits, and admits she's never met anyone like him before. She stares at him, eyes wide with real awe, because the way he's tied to that hidden world hits her straight in the heart. With a gritty nod, he locks in his gear and steels himself for what's coming next. Nearby, a quill whips across the parchment, scratching every document into place like the world can't afford a single second. While she locks herself into her guild paperwork and his future, he slips out into the hush of the moonlit fields, blade at the ready. He yells for the Flame Emperor, pouring the power of every spirit straight into his weapon until it ignites with brutal, ghostly light. The Shu technique is supposed to torch his weapon with flames so he can carve monsters in half. Yet when he finally tests it, all he gets is a weak, barely there warmth, not the roaring fire he swore he'd seen. Frustration burned in his chest, but he refused to quit. He kept practicing while out there, everyone else pored over the scrolls, desperate to uncover the key to his success. With the cave sealed tight behind him, a monstrous, clawed arm thrusts out into the night, warning everyone that the terror is back. The group halts to study a set of tracks on the dirt, and the streamers push them to follow, Then, even with the timing feeling totally off, she digs her heels in and says this is the perfect moment to broadcast. She flashes a wink and says, "We record our journey, so anyone thinking of sneaking up knows they'll be caught on a permanent digital trail." She turns to her audience and points out shocking how bright the cave is, then credits a tiny, light-spewing insect for making their whole exploration way easier. She tells her viewers to keep their eyes peeled for anything weird, while her crew readies themselves to watch the feed like hawks for any sign that trouble's coming. The air turns razor-thin as they feel the damp, nasty walls and ceiling under their fingertips, and a stern warning snaps, "Don't touch a thing." Suddenly the ground starts to quake, and their stomachs drop as they realize in pure terror the rock walls aren't stone at all. The moment the cave's real nature is exposed, viewers recoil in pure disgust. It's crawling with countless blinking eyes staring back at them. Reacting on pure instinct, the adventurers yank their weapons out and blast the creatures back with insect-bright light, cutting a straight path through the chaos. He jerked a hand toward the fox-eared girl, telling her to shut her eyes, and warned everyone watching to do the same because a blinding flash was about to explode. A brilliant, searing beam ripped through the cavern, blasting the darkness away for a split second and leaving every lurking threat scrambling in the glare. As the glow died out, the whole crew flinched at the cave walls peeling themselves like something alive, while he hyped the streamer for using those light-emitting insects in a way that worked brilliantly, even if it was totally terrifying. They hurriedly swept the area with their eyes and spotted a ribbon of light rushing toward an exit, but he barely avoided a nasty drop, and that made his companion snap, "Watch out." The broadcast kept rolling as they stared at that far-off mountain range, feeling a monstrous magical presence lurking in the air, and whispering that someone could be hiding somewhere up in those peaks. He huddled with his ally, checked the Blackstone and the whole area and found not a trace, no Blackstone, no intruders, so they just stared, wondering if their target slipped out before they could catch him. He strode toward the rushing water on the rock face and leaned in with one idea. If they followed that stream to where it began, they'd finally uncover the elusive Blackstone. They nodded at the plan, ready to track the water's trail. Then the ground gave way under their feet and a secret passage yawned open. He stared at the footprints stretching toward the water, knitted his brow, and muttered that they'd better move now, if they wanted to make it in time. The streamer shot an apology to the screen for the interruption, then blurted that she was back, resuming her broadcast, as she felt the tension snap in the air while she tracked the trail. They halted at a massive trench, staring into it like it had a secret origin, while the fox girl watched with worry gnawing at her face. In front of them sprawled a massive cavern, so huge it swallowed everything, except for one lone pedestal in the middle where a sacred blade sat waiting like it was untouchable. He jabbed a finger toward the center, shouted that it was the black stone, and demanded they grab it fast, because ominous cracks were already spidering across its surface. A familiar voice sliced through the air, roasting his delay as he finally clocked the newcomer, Gashu. The newcomer strutted in and taunted them to step forward with a nasty swarm of dark, shadowy things closing in, then waved off their pain like it was just old history. Asuras clutched a tiny, empty vial and his thoughts sprinted as he realized it was a serious warding medicine, probably stolen or scavenged from the Black Mark. Yesterday, that scent clung outside the village chief's home, and the moment it hit him, he pushed his curiosity straight onto the fox girl, demanding to know where that item came from. The adventurer feels unease creeping in and he basically says, "Let's drop this for now and get out of here." A mysterious force slips ahead before anyone can stop it, and now the whole group just stares at the road ahead, trying to figure out what to do next. With time ticking down and the scent slipping away, the crew decides, right then, to stick to the original plan and chase the river. The streamer flips to her hand-drawn map and reveals she's pored over months of broadcasts to map out the local terrain like a pro. She points to the exact landmarks and says, "Hit these spots and we'll finally dig up the truth we've been chasing." She leans in, eyes locked, soaking up every detail her companion throws at her about training. Then she remembers the advice she got right before sleep and sharpens her technique on the spot. He brushes off the challenge with a laugh, like his body is only now starting to wake up and tackle what's coming. He meets the challenge head-on, tells her new skills don't click overnight, and they both swear to keep driving forward together. Just like that, everything snaps into chaos. One horned rabbit bursts out of the brush and they're completely blindsided. The creature rockets forward with brutal, unexpected force, its massive size and blazing magical aura spiking the danger so hard the whole group has to snap into action instantly. With a sharp metallic clang, it slams in, and its brutal limbs smash through the space right in front of them as the adventurers scramble to defend themselves. With the dust finally settling, she scans the area in a heartbeat, making sure the threat right in front of her is gone for good. Then she pulls out a special paper made to test magical concentration, and as she watches the dye darken, she realizes, the deeper the color goes, the stronger the residual energy hits. She beams and tells them, with the water we pulled off a double broadcast, then points out that the magic density in this area is surging fast. He leans in like it's life or death as the Adventurer Association lays out their findings. Once he drinks that water, his magic gets shredded fast and it keeps draining for days. The crew freezes in shock, staring hard at the monster, then their breath catches as they spot it, the black stone right there in front of them. He feels the danger swelling in real time. His face tightens as he realizes the monster count is climbing fast, and they're about to swarm them. A sudden noise snaps him awake, and he whips around to shout, urging everyone to scramble and hide before they get spotted. With danger closing in fast, he shoves the others forward, then stays behind to bargain with the monsters and keep the way clear for them. Right as he steps in, the entrance crumples to the ground in a roar of dust and rubble, and he freezes, totally stunned by how fast everything flips. He frantically scans the comm device, praying for proof that Gashu's safe after all three of them finally slipped through. He plants his feet and vows to keep the hunt going, but his companion snaps for caution, telling the whole group to push upstream first.